Welcome to this week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. I'm John Strum, and I'm the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with the news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways that MS can impact a family. Today, I'll be asking our expert the questions you want answered. Please feel free to post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. MS Navigators will be online throughout today's live program, answering your questions and connecting you to resources. Research has shown that expressive therapies like dance and movement therapy, music therapy, and art therapy can help promote self-efficacy, emotional well-being, and motor control in people living with MS. Dr. Francois Béthue joins us today to discuss the benefits of integrating dance and movement therapy, music therapy, and art therapy into your treatment plan to help manage your MS symptoms and enhance your well-being. Dr. Béthue is the chairman of the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation at the Cleveland Clinic Neurological Institute and the medical director of the Cleveland Clinic Arts and Medicine Program. Dr. Béthue holds relationships with commercial interests, including MedRhythms, Inc. Welcome, Dr. Béthue, and thanks for joining us today.
Hi, John, and thank you for the invitation to join your podcast. It's a real pleasure to be with you today.
The Cleveland Clinic has a long-standing commitment to incorporating the arts into healthcare as a path to healing. Tell me, what are the benefits of integrating arts and medicine?
First, I would like to recognize that the initiatives to integrate the arts into healthcare came from the top leadership of the Cleveland Clinic. That's very impressive and rare enough to be mentioned, that the CEO of the Cleveland Clinic is the one who actually created what at the time was the Arts and Medicine Institute, because he recognized the potential benefits to everybody involved in healthcare. Of course, at the front line are our patients, the people who live with chronic conditions or maybe have surgeries, but also the caregivers and the professional caregivers, the nurses, doctors, etc., and also, of course, their families who often, have a role as caregivers as well. And the idea is that the arts reach us in a way that no other medical or health promoting intervention reaches us, because it has such an emotional component to it and also such a personal aspect to it. So, we talk about personalized medicine a lot these days, and I think the arts really touch at the heart of this, where, everybody's interaction with art is very personal, but it also can reach to all of us. Right? There are some types of music that may make you run away, but I love, and vice versa. The same goes with visual arts. So I think it can benefit a lot of people. We'll approach it in a different way, but in the end, we can engage with it at a very deep level, which is emotional, and then that helps derive health benefits. That's kind of a very generic way to say it.
Today, we're discussing using the arts for therapeutic purposes, which is different from recreational arts like a local painting or dance class. Can you explain what makes therapeutic art different?
There are two ways to consider therapeutic arts. One is using the arts for a therapeutic purpose by a trained and licensed professional. So we have music therapists, we have art therapists, we have dance and movement therapists. They all undergo a prolonged training, and they are experts at using the arts to help derive therapeutic benefits, often benefits on mood, on quality of life, but also benefits on movement, for example, on recovering speech in somebody who has difficulty speaking because of a stroke or other condition, or because of MS. And so this is the therapeutic art as provided by an expert, and these experts will use the arts in a therapeutic relationship. So they are trained healthcare providers using the arts as a means to deliver the therapeutic intervention. And then there's integrating the arts into the fabric of healthcare, which is another level that's been recognized actually recently by the NIH. The NIH has a great initiative about music and music in medicine. And they say we could also use music as medicine, right? We could use the arts as a medicine that we can add to our armamentarium of options that we have. And we can have people engage in it by, going into a creative mode, because creating is very engaging, but also being in a receptive mode, listening to music or visualizing a work of art and reacting to it, interacting with it.
You and your colleagues at the Cleveland Clinic developed a therapeutic arts program called Health, Resilience, and Well-Being Through the Arts. It exposed patients with a variety of chronic illnesses to different types of artistic activities to promote general health and wellness. What did you learn through this program?
So the name of this program is a mouthful, isn't it? The acronym is Here We Arts, which is much easier to handle. And it is a program that was designed primarily by our music and art therapist managers at the Cleveland Clinic in the arts and medicine program. And it consists of a series of sessions, and they were conceived of as group sessions where people would come to a location, generally one of our Cleveland Clinic locations in the region, as we call it, so closer to where people live. And it would be open to anyone who wanted to join from the community. And then, they would share a light meal and then engage with a trained provider in a topic related to the arts. It could be the use of music, the use of visual arts, the use of drumming, for example, for movement, and so on. So there would be a presentation followed by an experience, by creating something or starting something. And then people would leave the session with homework that they had to engage in, or they were promising to engage in it until the next session, which was the week after. And then at the beginning of the next session, they would report if they had actually engaged in the activity, if they enjoyed it, and then it would move on. The idea was to provide almost like a tasting menu of how the arts could be integrated into health promotion for the person's own benefit, with the hope that at least one of these would be very appealing to the person and they would continue to do it after the program was over. It's only an 8-week program, and that they would then continue to interact with it. Sometimes it would be something that had given up before because of their health condition and reacquainted with, or sometimes something very new that they thought, well, I don't have the talent for it, and they discovered that you don't have to be super talented to derive benefit and enjoyment from interacting with a form of art.
Is this program still active? And if it is, how can people participate?
So the program is still active. We started it as a research study because we really wanted to understand if we get it right? If we got the right ingredients and if people were really reporting benefit from it. And after we saw that there was actually benefit that was reported, then we rolled it out to different populations. And with the COVID pandemic, we had to be creative, right? So we had to go to an online platform, and we engaged healthcare providers because, as you know, nurses and other healthcare providers needed a lot of support during the pandemic. We also tried to engage people with a variety of chronic conditions, and we're now working to engage people who are elderly and also have chronic conditions and could benefit from it. So it is available through the Cleveland Clinic. What I would encourage people who are interested is to contact the Arts and Medicine program or contact me at the Cleveland Clinic to know what's available. It goes by sessions. As I said, it's 8 sessions, and so it's not always active, but we're trying to maintain funding to keep it active in some way, shape, or form every year.
Exercise and physical activity are important for general health, and they're recommended for people living with MS at every ability level. Dance is a form of physical exercise that adds components of movement, creativity, structured movement, and rhythm. Emma is asking if dance and movement therapy provide different benefits than traditional exercise like walking or lifting weights.
That's a great question. And I'm so grateful that there is a growing literature to support what we call physical activity and exercise. So physical activity is anything physical that we do on a day-to-day basis, that we hope that it maybe makes our heart beat a little faster and makes us, breathe a little faster also, so that it has an aerobic component. Exercise is a form of physical activity that's very structured. But we may go to the gym and we may lift weights, we may go on a stationary bike, we may also walk for exercise, of course. Dance and movement therapy, or the use of dance, as a form of exercise, is different because there's an emphasis on the movement, on how to communicate through movement, how to communicate emotions, particularly through movement. And so it's a way to express yourself as you're doing a physical activity. So the emphasis may not be as much on the quantity of exercise, but how strenuous it could get and how out of breath you could get from it necessarily. Although, as we all know, from dancing, we can get quite out of breath. But it's also again, conveying emotions, sharing them with a group as well, which is very powerful. And so, again, it could be done with a therapist, a dance and movement therapist, alone or in a group format. What we did is conduct a research study with a local dance company. So we had trained dance professionals interact with a small group of people with MS, and they were getting prompts and they were guided into movement exercises, if you wish, and there was a progression through each session, and there was much enjoyment from the participants there. So the difference is really that it is a form of art, and so there's expression, there's emotion, there's interaction, more than in a traditional form of exercise.
You and your colleagues were involved in a dance and movement pilot study called Moving MS. The study focused on social emotional well-being, body awareness, and gross and fine.
Fanatics Sportsbook. Only Fanatics rewards your loyalty with up to 10% fan cash on your bets. And as fair play first stat protection. It's time for something new. Switch to Fanatics Sportsbook.
Artwork. Our team will be judging it and thinking about it, and you will be able to vote for the best 6 soon on our website. You can find all the details already in a blog on the website, so check that out if you're curious. But again, thank you for submitting all the amazing entries. I had a chance to look at all of them today, and it actually blows my mind.
Yeah, I'm really happy we are able to do one of those contests again. We've been doing a few of those in the past, but it was time again.
And also just in general, the community, like the cosplayers, all the cool fan art that you post on our socials over the years, it's like really crazy and very, very, like, it makes us working on this game and here because it gives us life. So thanks.
It's rewarding.
Very much so. And as Dennis mentioned, we do have a Crytek docu series on the Crytek YouTube channel. Check out the link in the chat for that. And we are going through many of our games, including Hanshodan as well.
Yeah, we just recently released the 5th episode of that one. So we're now basically in the present with a documentary. So yeah, if you want to catch back on like the early years of Crytek, also like the different games we've done over the years, as well as Hanshodan, definitely go check it out.
And if you want to see more of Dennis, make sure to check it out because he's in a lot of those. Well, let's talk about some of our community highlights this time around. First of all, we had a Lunar New Year.
Yeah, that was amazing. So like new Gain of Skill story challenge, like people were super happy about this one. And I think it's still going until, was it the 7th of April, right?
7th of April, you can still get it.
Yeah, and it will return in the future.
Yeah, so again, like really cool one. And we have to highlight some of the cool merch that is dropping with event, like...
Oh, you're wearing a shirt there, Vince.
Yeah, it's an unusual shirt, but really cool. And don't check it out yet because there's some spoilers on it for the stream. And also we will have some displays coming into the store, so make sure to check those out as well. And maybe Dennis, if you want to say anything about Murder Circus event and recap what really happened there.
So it's really, really great to just do another run of the Murder Circus with the Murder Circus and Core. Like engagement was amazing. Also like having like these new like in between beats as we had with the Balweaver compounds and the Flame Rifle coming in, etc. Just getting these exciting pieces out, I think was really, really fun for everybody.
Yeah, it was really fun. And there's another thing we gather your feedback about as well, which is the 15 players missions that we recently ran some tests on. You may have participated in it. So Dennis, what was the feedback on that?
Yeah, first off, I mean, thanks for everybody for participating in this one. We've compiled all of our findings into a little blog post already, so if you want to go into the details of this one, you can check that one out. In general, feedback was great on the trio side of things, not so great on the duo side of things. There were a couple of pain points we understood, like things that you didn't like. And what's really interesting from our side was just going through the data, seeing the feedback and seeing like how certain aspects resonated stronger or not so strong in certain like demographics, like MMR brackets as well as regions. So super fascinating to kind of see like how everybody is kind of responding to this and maybe in different ways even. So what we've learned from this one is that mostly it's about the spawn fights, which were a bit like too much, like the third partying wasn't so nice, and there's obviously the economy piece as well, where maybe you just lose a little bit more and therefore maybe, well, you don't get as much out. Like, so what's about the bounty value, for example? So a couple of these points that we want to go back to on the drawing board a little bit, continue iterate on those, and then we aim on doing like another playtest in the future. But first we want to make sure that we actually have some answers on those.
Again, if you want more detail on it, as Dennis mentioned, you can check out our blog post already live at hanshowdown.com in the news segment, so make sure to read it. But let's talk about Poor Surfer Band. That is our in-house band, if you didn't know. So it's made of our developers, and it's responsible for all the awesome music in Hunt, around Hunt. And we reached a huge milestone with the band, over 100 million streams worldwide.
That's amazing. It's well deserved. It's a good listen.
Yeah, and again, thank you for your support across all the platforms. You can find the Port Surfer Band on Apple Music, Spotify, or YouTube Music, or any of the other major platforms you may listen to music to. And additionally, we have a new release on Steam for the Shadow Wakes Deluxe Edition, which has over 45 tracks.
Yeah, including the Rain and the Zal, which is a really cool ambient track. I really like this one a lot.
Yeah, and as always with Port Surfer Band, a lot of more surprises coming very, very soon.
They don't cease to amaze, so there we go.
Amazing. So now we took these housekeeping things and exciting community things out of the way. Let's get back to the update and 2.7. So what is coming in the stream and for the update?
So in general, we have Devil's Trail as a new event running from March 18th to June 10th. And in this event, we're going to focus a lot on tracking and scouting. So we're going to go back like to the core, but back to the roots with this one. So we'll talk about all the details now in the stream, of course. But in general, what we'll be talking about is new scouting mechanics, scout towers as new locations, a new monster, new traits, new tarot cards, points of interest, and more. So we dive into details of all of those throughout the stream.
And even more activities will come during the event. But let's talk about those in a bit more detail now.
Yeah, so like in general, like this is an important piece that we want to evolve our events again and over again. It's like a never-ending process. And one of the things that we've been experimenting with over the last 2 big updates has been like these sub-beats, like something happening in between, multiple beats during the event. The latest of those was the Balweaver compounds and the Flame Rifle in January, like as a mid-event beat. And then at the end of the Murder Circus on Core, we also had like the new mail supply points. So there's always something new, some cool new pieces in there. I mean, just like do more of that one, give you guys a bit more new contents, gameplay shifts throughout the event period in general. So exciting new pieces. Not everything is just always there to get-go, but things evolve and change. And we will reveal a lot more, obviously, in the future streams about those.
But we can already talk a bit about the next beat that is coming on April 15th.
Yeah, so this is like our first beat after the initial release, and that will be focusing on the Inferno time of day. So of those of you who don't know what Inferno is, it's basically large parts of the map are on fire. You have different paths now, areas are blocked. You have obviously then the sound from the fire impacting you, the visibility is impacted. It's a very, very awesome atmosphere to just walk around in, but it changes things up a little bit. So Inferno is coming back, and of course for the first time also will be on Mammon's Gulch. We also have some new Hellborn activities. I'm going to keep it as vague as possible for the moment because obviously we're going to talk about this more as we get closer to this first beat. And then joining like the entire Inferno theme, we also have a appropriate firefighter supply point with some cool new goodies there.
And we will also have a new DLC release around this time around too. But let's talk about even more into the future about May, just very brief.
So sticking with this monthly-ish beat structure we have there, like every month or so we have something new. In May, we want to return some of the fan favorite contents. So there will be things that you guys really liked before. I'm going to bring them back. So we take like event elements a little bit. So we can keep that again even more vague because we're going to talk about it as well as we get closer.
Exactly, it's quite far away still, so more surprises are to come.
Stay tuned. There's more stuff coming throughout the entire event.
But now that we talked about what is coming later in the event, let's get back to the top of it and let's talk about Devil's Trail. Now, make sure to stick around the whole stream because there's a lot of things towards the end too that you really don't want to miss. So let's dive into the lore, and before that, why don't we roll the amazing cinematic trailer that we have, which really recaps the lore.
It's amazing. Love it.
Initiation, don't you? Now, there's always been some blood involved. I just want to add a little more flavor.
Initial reconnaissance report to Lieutenant Colonel Whitlaw. We reached the target site on June 1st, 1896.
Found signs of fighting, casualties, spilled bandages. Rumors confirmed.
The dead are walking, skin peeling like birch bark. We observed multiple armed and skilled combatants engage.
3 survived and ran. We followed her trail and established base camp in an abandoned hunting tower to map the area. But we were attacked.
Now, what brings you two down here?
Levinson?
We encountered former Private Grizz Levinson.
He told us about hunters and the inoculations that keep them from becoming fiends.
We've decided that the injections will increase our chances of fulfilling the mission.
It is the only way to see what's really out there.
Disregard previous reports. Condition is stable. No infected in sight. All progressing smoothly. We see. At all hours we see the bright dawn. It lights the trail ahead.
What an amazing trailer. So Dennis, for those that maybe didn't catch everything in, could you just recap what really happens here?
Yeah, so basically in the story we're following 2 indigenous scouts. They're sent over to investigate what's going on in the incursion zones for one of those military groups. And well, they're determined to stop the growing nightmare, but they kind of choose to fight the monsters themselves, like, so no more scouting. So as they go in, as you would expect with any hunter, at one point their personal gains kind of become more important and they start going for their own benefits. This is primarily after they meet the cook, and the cook gives them some stuff to mess around with, and it's really a twist. Like, but basically they kind of lose track of the original mission and become proper hunters.
Yeah, so we already mentioned some of the key figures, but let's just take a close look at them. So first we have the One Who Flies.
One of Flies is like one of those two indigenous army scouts. And then the second one is Red Raven, the cousin of One Who Flies. And then the third one is the cook, which used to be a former private in the army, so they know him by name. But I think he got fired from his last job because he was like cooking human flesh or something. So not the person you want to trust with. But then again, they do, and that spells doom for all of them.
And all these 3 hunters will be part of the battle pass this time around.
Yeah. And really cool shots there, like One Who Flies, and yeah, he's not just flying over the table like in the trailer.
Then of course the Red Raven.
Red Raven, the cousin, really cool as well. And the cook, which is Chris Levinson.
Really cool one.
Former private.
And we have some other key figures in the Turncoat gang.
Yeah, so also, you remember the Turncoat, it's one of our DLC hunters, been out for some time, but like, he now has a gang, and maybe had them for some time, but there are some reinforcements in the gang. And on one hand, we have now the Bandit, and then we also have the Highwayman. So both of those are like members of the gang. They're kind of drawn into this, being more on the wrong side of the law. And if you notice, actually, like the Stormseer and the Headtaker, like they're both also like part of the same gang. But obviously we're going to focus on the Bandit and Highwayman, and those two are basically our like BP hunters for this event.
Yeah, you will be able to get them in the store during the event. And we also have a new DLC releasing with the Madness of Montresor.
The Madness of Montresor, yeah, really cool as well. That goes very nicely along with the Phantom, I suppose. Very cool character, and also pretty awesome backstory.
Yeah, so why don't we just look at the trailer for this?
Yeah, let's do it. Really cool content pieces in there. I really like that we got like a new Crack Silencer skin, and also you can't have enough normal Nagans as well as the Derringer Penny Shot to round it up. So I think it's a really cool set.
And of course the Hunter itself. But we still have a new story challenge coming in this update for free, the Vigilant Justice. And just to remind everyone, the event will be running from next Wednesday until the 10th of June. So note that down right now in the notepad.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the story challenge.
All right, so we also have like a new free story challenge. As you know, like we use those story challenges to kind of bring back some of those older skins as well, like some of those skins you had from before or E96 relaunch. And this time around, we're going to survivor versions. And we're going to release 2 new versions of them, which is like Joan Damon, the Tracker, and Leon Olitsky, the Looter. And the whole thing is about a story where Joan basically tries to hunt down Leon after a deadly robbery. But like the motives, as always in the Bayou, may blur the line between villain and victim.
Yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff to earn already during the event. But let's actually dive into the progression of the event and all the other rewards that players may be able to get.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about the structure of the event. There's basically like the same formula as we've been running for some time. So we continue with the pledge mark system. That means you will earn event points. If you have 25 event points earned during a match, you also get a pledge mark from that one, and you can use those pledge marks obviously to can unlock like sealed rewards and do cool things, gameplay relevant things inside the mission. But also you earn event points now by revealing hidden information, because it's all about scouting and tracking. So we're going to talk about that in a second.
And of course, we have a brand new battle pass with 50 rewards to earn. It will include a lot of weapons, the hunters we mentioned earlier, so the 3 hunters, some cool weapon animation and just animations that you can equip for a lot of cool stuff, and some player profile customization too. So why don't we take a look at some
Let's have a look at them, yeah.
Rewards. Yeah, so let's start with Chef's Kiss, which will be a skin for the Vandal 73C family, for the Striker, Bullseye, and normal variant.
Yeah, so exactly as you mentioned, like there's 3 versions of this one. You see the Striker version here, but we also have the Bullseye and the regular one. So a bit of Vandal love, which is really cool.
Really cool one. We will also have the Trail Beater set for the Centennial.
Yeah, an absolute favorite of mine. Like, so I like when they're like having this new frontier kind of like trapper type of look, so I'm really happy the Centennial gets a bit of a treatment there. Again, also you get versions for the Sniper and the Trauma version, as well as the base version, and this one I think is going to be one of my go-to picks for sure.
And I know that you also really like traps, and we have 3 new
Who told you that?
So first we have like an alert trip mine, one of the 3 in the family, which is called Loud Footfall.
Yeah, that's really, really cool as well. So like alert 1 is the first one, and you're going to see the other ones in a moment.
Then we have the Graham Coma Pants for the Romero 77 family. It will include the Talon and the Alamo variant as well.
You can see the Alamo here. I really like that one. Like this one, obviously in the hands of some of our like skull mask wearing hunters is gonna be like super awesome.
Yeah, this one is really badass. Not gonna lie. And let's look at a cute charm, Survivor's Power. Really nice.
Nice weapon charm. You have the horse.
Then we have Skull's Eye, which is for the Nagant Precision.
Yeah, again, like the Nagant Precision is one of those weapons. I think, personally, I feel like it's underused. Like, I love using that gun because no one expects it. So, for example, if you go with 2 medium loadouts and you'd have the bow in one, and then this one is your ranged option with some high velocity, you can do some nasty headshot with this one. I really like this one. It's not necessarily meta, but it's really fun to use.
Definitely, and the second trap in the family is the Damned Footfall, which is obviously for the Concertina.
Yeah, I really like that you can see like the pattern there, similar to patterns we saw on the Centennial family. So it feels very like frontier new look. I really like this one.
We also have a skin coming for the FUCs, which is the Radiant Afterlife.
Yeah, like, fitting that skull theme.
Cool. And a Lamont skin for Relevation's Path.
Yeah, this one is really amazing as well. Like, again, good backup for the Centennial, I suppose.
Yeah. And a really, really badass throwing axe, I must say, called Fork in the Road.
Yeah, like, imagine like this might belong to the cook, I suppose, but like really, really cool. Like, I like how all of like the cutlery is kind of like merged, molten into this, and then shaped from there. It's really, really cool.
He's definitely a twisted cook, and that's why we also have this hive bomb, which is called Bone Broth.
Yeah, also really cool thing. Like I like the fork in front there.
Yeah, pretty creepy stuff. And my favorite new weapon charm, I must say, is called Noctilica. And we also have a small video to showcase this one because
it's actually animated. So I have a little glowing element in there. I think it's really cool. It's like a nice touch.
I really love that. I really do. And the last of the 3 taps called Toxic Footfall. And of course, because of that, it's a poison. Shook my.
Yeah, really cool.
And let's go back to that cook with a tastemaker.
Also, it has a heavy knife. Someone needs to do a chopping of that human flesh, I suppose.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Really cool, this one as well. I really like this.
And we do have a new ammo box too, called The End of the World.
Again, like kind of a bit more fitting with the skull theme, etc. I like this one because like it has like ornamentation on it. It like, looks more like high quality, etc. I really like this.
And the last in the battle pass that you unlock as the bonus level after you finish the pass is Knight's Gift, a cool weapon charm.
That is so cute.
And again, it is just not all the rewards that you can get a battle pass. We have animations, a few more charms as well, and the player profile customization.
Yeah, there's even like an animation in there now for the traps. So curious for you guys to see that for the first time then.
But now we went through the rewarding side of things. Let's talk about the meaty gritty part of the event, which is very important, and we build this whole thing around it. The tracking and scouting part. Let's start with the scouting.
Yeah, so let's dive a little bit into the actual mechanics, also what's changing for the event. And the first point here is the scouting element. The scouting is all about like revealing hidden information. It's about locations and finding stuff. So let's focus on this section first. So what's different? By default, we have the supply points and the extraction points hidden on the map. So as you go into the match and you open up the map on your start point, you will not see any of those in there. However, you have the chance to kind of uncover those again, to reveal these locations, and you can use that either by using the new scouting maps, or you can also reveal that information by going directly to these locations as you find them. But that's not all, because you can also just ping them from a distance. You don't even have to go there. So if you're, for example, at Preston Oil and you see the boat in the far distance, you don't have to detour just to understand where this is and unlock it and make sure it's marked on the map. Just ping it, it's fine. And in addition to that, even if you have the spyglass, it even shows you like nearby locations above the compass on top, still icons, so you can understand that maybe something is nearby. You want to like rotate there and look and see if you can find it. So very easy to kind of get that information, and revealing it also obviously gives you event points, so there's a nice reward for this.
Yeah, so you mentioned interacting with the scout map and the scout towers. So what are the scout towers?
If you can go back one more, I want to say one more thing there on the last point there, because it's important just to give you guys a wrapper. So when we talk about discovering these locations, the important piece is that if you follow the objective, so you go for the clues, you find the boss, you kill and banish them, you will still understand where the exits are, because we also give you information about where you can leave the map with your reward, with your prize. If you do a banish, or if you pick up a bounty token either directly from the boss or because you take it from some other hunter. So there's always a chance to still understand where you're going. It's just that by not going to, for example, the map and reveal everything, you might be a bit at a disadvantage. You might not know where the supplies are. Or if you are attacking, let's say, another banish, at that point, maybe the guys inside, they will know now because they've done the banish where the exits are, but you attacking, you might not have that information if you didn't go to the tower first. So maybe now they have a chance to slip away from you besieging them. So it just adds a different dynamic, and it kind of makes it important to use information now more as a weapon by just like figuring out what do I need to know when I can make the best decisions. Should I go to the towers? Should I skip them? So it's very interesting. And then also the chariot card also reveals the current exits on top of that.
Yeah, but let's go to the towers.
Yes.
So let's talk about the brand new tower archetype, the Scout Towers.
So in general, we have a new location called the Scout Towers. There's always 2 Scout Towers on the map. I think there's a possibility of like up to 3 positions where they could be, so it kind of always is a bit random which ones are active. And they're the only things marked on the map initially. So you basically have a go-to beacon, like go to the map, and you know all the information, the rest fills in. But you can also obviously choose to ignore them and then reveal everything manually if you prefer and choose to do so. If you want to just go hunt the boss instead, that's perfectly fine. But what you get at a Scout Tower, so first off, you have the scouting map. So this is where if you interact with it, you reveals all the locations, you know where the supply points are or any other like custom locations that we have this time around. You also get access to the new tarot cards, which we're going to talk about down the line, as well as random rewards like custom ammo, maybe sometimes trades, weapons, etc. So maybe let's just have a look at that stuff.
Yeah, let's take a look at the new Scout Towers.
So as you can see here, as you start the round, like you get a little pop-up that kind of tells you like what's different this time around. So it's only that you see those Scout Towers. There's nothing else on the map. Now, if you go to one of those towers, you're gonna see them like traditional towers, but they're a bit different. There's different ways up now. They're also a bit more camouflaged, so someone has been using them for reconnaissance. If you go all the way up, for example, like you can actually do this now. There's usually like a sniper rifle you can find up there. Maybe it's a Springfield, maybe it's something else. It's kind of randomly placed, so you can always get like something with a scope in there, and then you obviously do those headshots, which was not staged at all. And you also have a chance, for example, to climb up with a ladder, kind of like directly coming up from the underside. There's different ways up, so it's not as easy as some of the other towers to lock them down. In the center, you have the table with a map, and the moment you interact with them, it just burst reveals and gives you those event point rewards for each of the locations that you have now revealed, and you now have the full map visible. And in there, you see the supply points, you see the exits, and you see some of the special locations we have. You also find the tarot cards there. So we have the High Priestess, which we're going to talk about more. You have the All Ears trait, and then you have the Pathfinder tarot card as well. Quite a good location to go to. Quite meaningful. You get a lot of cool stuff there. So you don't necessarily want to miss out on that one. But understandably, if you, for example, find the boss right at the first compound, maybe you don't want to. But still, again, repeating that, you still get the extract information if you engage with the boss.
Yeah, and at the end we saw the hint of the new one of the new locations. So why don't we talk about the Burned Convoys as well?
So the Burned Convoy is what everybody is looking for. So that's what they're scouting. It's basically our new point of interest for this event. And again, it's also hidden from the map by default. However, it does emit like a large smoke pillar. There's like smoke plumes everywhere. So you can actually find it if you just like scan the horizon and if depending on where you are, maybe not everyone Mammoth Gulch because of the big mountain in the center, but in general, you should have a good way of kind of figuring out where this thing is. And you can just choose to go there directly if you find it. And this one obviously contains a lot of unique loot, and I think we're going to look at that and talk about what loot that is as we watch the trailer.
Yeah, so let's look at it.
Video. So generally, like the Burned Convoy is one of those special locations we have. And you can see like the big smoke pillar here, kind of revealing it at distance. And at that location, you do find a lot of like traits and tarot cards, envelopes. So this is a very great place to go to. You also have guaranteed access to Catalyst here, as a trait always spawns. You also get the All Ears trait for 2 pledge marks. And then obviously you have some other random stuff that you can find here as well. There's also tarot cards here, and you have a guaranteed spawn of the Empress and the Chariot here. So this is quite a valuable place, and you want to be the first one there because you can pick a claimant. This is also, and I think that's an important piece as well, this is where you go to if you are missing health, because this is where you find a health restoration kit.
And with that, we solved first half of the equation, the scouting part. But let's talk about the active and passive tracking of your enemies. Talking about the active part first.
Yeah,
so
let's start with the active tracking, and that's like the two tarot cards and the trait. So let's start with the High Priestess. So the High Priestess is a new card that reveals the direction of the closest enemy hunter. You might think, don't we have something like that already with the Hanged Man? Yes, but in a different way. So what this does is basically creates a temporary world effect and a compass marker pointing in the direction. So this is something you can use much more in combat or when you're close by, because you're not being pulled out into a spectator camera view and then have to figure out where they are exactly. There's some drawbacks to this, of course, because you don't know how far away they are. You just get a direction. You also don't know what if they're alone, if there's a team, etc. That's where the Hangman still has like an advantage over this, but it's much more reactive. So you can use it at any point during a mission. And it also updates then for the 30 seconds it remains active in which direction the closest hunters are. So you can also just drop this in the middle of combat and then at least get some more precise information like, okay, it has to be in this building, not the other building.
Yeah, so why don't we also look at this, how it actually looks in game.
So you can see here we're using the example of finding one of those in the scout towers. Of course, you still get your little like information about what the card does if you look at it. Inspect it for a moment. It's a nice card. Really awesome,
cool art,
really awesome artwork as well. Now, if you use it, now you see like there's like a particle effect that kind of points towards the nearest location of a hunter. This is very similar to, for example, what you remember for like Rotjaw traces, for example. And then that direction gives you that indication where you should look. And you also see on top of the compass when it's active, you see like the actual marker direction there as well for the nearest enemy. So you can use it both from the compass side, but also as it remains at a position when you cast it, like everybody in the team can also just get it at a quick glance. So in this case, we know, okay, there's someone in here, so I'll just move around. You see this move very fast on the compass. That usually is an indication that they're very close by. And there they are, and now they're dead.
But we do have another tarot card coming, which you may have seen on my shirt. The Pathfinder.
Yeah, let's talk about the Pathfinder. So this is a second also PvP-focused tarot card, because tracking is all about finding other players. So this one reveals all clues discovered by any hunter on the map. So whenever you decide to play this card, we're gonna highlight on the map all of the clue positions in red that someone has interacted with, be that yourself or someone else. That effect kind of lasts for like 30-ish or so seconds. And then it kind of fades out on the map as well, so it's temporary, and you can always like repeat that just to get an update. But whenever you cast it, then you get a snapshot of like what are the clues that have been interacted with by anyone so far, and it helps you to kind of paint a picture on the map. Like, okay, maybe there's no one in the northwest corner, but you know what? We have some neighbors here directly on the right-hand side. So it just gives you the chance to see where enemies could be. But of course, you can also game this, right? You can also just choose not to use the first clue. Like just moving ahead, and then you have your neighbors maybe thinking that they're alone, but actually you are still there. So there's a bit of mind games, as is usual for mechanics in our game, like attached to this one, where you can play with this and see what is the right approach for you.
Yeah, and let's take a look at it as well, how it looks in game when you activate it.
And picking this up from the tower. Again, awesome artwork. Definitely gonna get your shirt there, Benzo.
Yeah.
Not exactly that shirt, but like that shirt.
Very nice. No, exactly this shirt.
So here, like I've now used the clue, using the card. If I now open up the map, I will understand. Okay, well, I see where there's something in red. Someone else has already also been interacting with a clue. So now, if I do this a little bit later in the mission, like maybe after the second clue or so, just to double check again, see like a lot more of those show up, and obviously like the longer you wait, the more clues in general probably will have been interacted with. So it's important for you to find like the right windows, like what is the right moment to use this? Should I wait maybe shortly after the first clue? Should I wait a little bit longer? Should I just do it right in the beginning? It's up to you. Figure out the right strategy for it, but it really depends on when you use it and to see what effect you get out of it.
Yeah, and for those chatters that were all ears during the Scout Tower section, they may have heard that there's also a trait coming up, which is conveniently called All Ears.
Yeah, so the All Ears trait is really, really powerful one, really amazing. Basically, what the trait does, it changes what you hear while you're using Darkside. In general, it reduces the Darkside ambient noise. So, like, you know, like if you just go into Darkside normally, there's always a bit of ambient, and sometimes like it's just a drawback of using that power, that you sometimes don't hear what's going on around. Now, what it does, however, is it amplifies enemy hunter audio in the direction of you. So think of it as a directional microphone, where you can, for example, more easily identify footstep sounds and them reloading, or like any pieces that are kind of like relevant for the hunter action. So enemy hunter audio in general in direction of you gets boosted. And you can also find this at the Scout Towers and the Burn Convoy for 2 pledge marks. So a very powerful trait. Still has some drawbacks, because obviously you will be in Darkside when you use it, so you might miss other pieces. It's hyper-focused to the front. But if you use it wisely, it might actually reveal some enemies you might not even know that they're actually coming around the corner.
And we also have a little showcase for this, so let's just listen and watch it at the same time.
I'll be quiet now. As you could see here, is like a bit of a sense of the distances behind it as well, but like you might at least understand, like if they have moved off the road there into like the bushes and stuff, you might understand, like, are they still moving? Are they coming closer? Is it one set of footsteps? Is it multiple? So like it keeps you a bit guessing, so you still need to interpret what you hear, but it allows you to kind of like track things a little bit easier. In general, the rule of thumb is like around like a tripling of the existing audio. So you can hear stuff roughly 3 times further out compared to what you normally can when it comes to hunter sounds.
And now that we covered our new trait in this update, we also introduced some systematic changes to the trait. So let's talk about the trait system change.
So in general, like we want to make traits and trait drops and finding traits a little bit more predictable, but also to kind of change some of the focus around them. So the first point here, and that's super important, is like you now have guaranteed trait drops at brutes and meatheads. Before they were kind of 50-ish to 80-ish%, and you didn't always get one. Whenever you down a brute or a meathead now, you always get 1 trait dropped guaranteed. So you can now go hunt them a bit more with focus. However, we now have a change that the trait spurs, they start to disappear. They fade out after the first use. So over the course of like 90 seconds, after the first time someone has interacted with them, they're gone. So now you need to coordinate a lot better. What that means is that if you go and hunt for those, for example, go and hunt meatheads, you will benefit from that one. You're being rewarded for having done the work. but it's not about like anyone else just coming by 20 minutes later and finding and just getting a free trade. This is going to be super important also when it comes to the wild targets, where you see a much bigger reward now for going after Rotjaw and the Hellborn, because if you did all the work, you might benefit from maybe that Death Shade drop, but the other people may be coming later, sitting in the bushes, waiting for you to move on to grab it as well. Well, they might be too late now. Again, it requires some more coordination. So if you find like Doctor in the tower, maybe you want to tell your friends a little bit before you pick it, so that they all have a chance to get if they want to. But in general, there's a bit of a focus piece around this one now, so that we want to reward those who really go for the pieces, go for hunting those enemies, go find stuff, and not just like scavenge everything afterwards. We also have changed it so that the trade spurs are now visible and audible in Darkside. So if you're close by to one, you can now detect them a little easier. So just checking Darkside once in a while, just like around buildings, etc. You might be able to kind of see that something is there. Before you were able to redo this with like the Remedy, for example, it's like a general thing now. So you can always see them within, I think, 25-ish or so meters, and you can hear them around like 10 meters or so audibly. And we've also reduced some of the trade spur spawns in the world, so you don't find them as frequently anymore, because keep in mind, like, you're not gonna get them guaranteed from the bigger monsters. But if you do find them in the world, they usually offer higher value now, so you got like more of those trades that actually might be more meaningful for you, or at least if you don't want them, you can kind of get your upgrade points for those after the mission with a higher amount.
And with that, we covered the active side of tracking your enemies in the game, but there's also passive tracking now. So what is that exactly about?
So passive tracking is basically tracking stuff in our sandbox. There are some elements we've had like forever, like for example, someone has been using an ammo box, and then the ammo box is now slightly open. You understand, okay, a player has been at the supply point. And we want to do more of that to give you just a richer experience trying to figure out when people have been at locations or not. So in general, it's about opened items, it's broken objects that persist. We have a bit more tracking like abilities that way, because in the details, every time you, for example, interact with an envelope, they're ripped open a little bit, so they kind of change visually, similar to like the open boxes. We also had this now added to the ammo packs, the small ones, so they have like an open state as well if someone has ever used them. If you like destroyed a barrel or interacted with the cages before, like there's like broken pieces, broken debris of their barrels at this position. So, this was the explosion we heard earlier. Right? Like, so it gives you a chance to kind of piece information together by just observing the world. For example, there might be like these scorch marks left over by the trade spurs, which are disappearing now. Like, but you at least understand, there was a trade up in that tower. Someone has grabbed it. I see some of the bone dust and some of the magical pieces still around there, but I can't interact with it anymore. But at least I understand someone was there. We also changed the door so that by default, every door is like fully closed now, no longer just a bit ajar. But the moment someone interacted with it and even closed it afterwards again, it will just go back to this ajar state. So again, it allows you kind of see a little bit better what's going on in the world. There's some more changes we've been doing. One of them, for example, is that whenever you use a med kit now, or the first aid kit in the world, it actually leaves some bloody wrecks on the ground now. So I understand, okay, someone has been healing here. So the whole world should feel a lot richer through these like small little additions here and there. I think we had a few more. Let me just have a look in the section here. Just
for example, vaulting a fence now.
Yeah, exactly. Like so we have some of those fences where you can vault over. And as you vault over on some of them, that kind of chip off a little bit of the wood now, so you can kind of like see that someone has maybe been vaulting over this. So there's a full list in the patch notes of those things, but it's really, really nice to kind of enrich the sandbox by just having more of those reactive pieces in there, which you can, if you know about them, kind of trace players down, track them, and use that for your hand.
Yeah, I mean, this is like such an amazing change, and I know the community have been requesting features like this for a while, so I'm really, really excited to have this in the game. But now that we covered the tracking and scouting part of the update, let's talk about the gameplay changes that are coming with it.
Yeah, we're going a bit more into details now. So we're going to start first with the weapon balancing pieces. So this one I'm going to already put my cheat sheet a little bit up, because I want to give you guys exact numbers on this one. So the first point is like compact ammo penetration has been buffed a little bit. So this was a point that you guys brought up a couple of times now since the 2.0 release, about like that you feel like that compact ammo got the short end of the stick. So we boosted it a little bit. It's still obviously important to note that like medium bullets and long bullets are still the ones with a better penetration because they're the more powerful, bigger bullets. However, in general, compact should just be a little bit better now. So if you had that fight across a fence, for example, your bullets should not just get stuck in the fence as easily and actually pierce through that one layer. So in general, there should be a bit of a boost. So yeah, please, once you guys have a chance to play this yourselves, give us a feedback if it's enough, if you feel it's fine, especially comparing like FMJ ammunition and the larger calibers, if the balance feels all right for this. We also did a pass to have a smoother handling for some of the underused weapons. So we picked up a couple for those, which is the Cyclone, the Mako, the Berthier, and the Romero, and the Haymaker. All of those got updates. I'm going to go through each of these points now in detail because I know you guys want to hear that. So what did we do on the Cyclone? We decreased the damage from 124 to 120. So there's a nerf on the Cyclone actually, because we felt this one was a bit too used to much, especially after 2.4 when we did changes to the body multipliers or the hunters. So overall, like, it was just too easy to tap people with it at shorter distances. So dropping the damage down, we also increased the recoil just slightly from 6 to 7. And we also reduced the reserve ammunition from 20 to 16. So this is in terms of countering some of the spam. The Cyclone will be a bit harder to use. It's still powerful, as most of the semi-automatics are if you use them. You can do that with the follow-up shots quite effectively, even like a Bornheim match, etc. As you know, like it can be a powerhouse. So this weapon will still be very good. However, it was a bit too good, so now we just nerfed it just slightly. Now moving on to the Mako. The Mako 1895, we reduced the cycle time from 1.6 to 1.35 seconds. That means overall you can get more shots in faster. And consequently, we also reduced the INI cycle time from 1.5 to 1.3 seconds. So you should just feel the weapon a bit smoother as you try to get the next shot off rather than have this artificial delay before you can do so. And also we changed the reload speed on that weapon that it takes like 11 instead of 13 seconds now for full reload. So in general, everything is just a bit smoother as you kind of load in the next rounds. So mostly on the handling side for the Mako. Then the next thing is the Berthier. And on the Berthier, we have reduced the cycle time from 2.1 seconds to 1.7. So also the weapon can fire it just a little bit faster. Interesting piece is that the stats actually already had it at 1.7. It's just the actual balance was still the older, slower 2.1 seconds. So again, a minor increase, but just it feels a bit smoother and should help the Berthier to kind of stand out a little bit from some of its cousins like the Crack, etc. Then the next one is the Romero 77 Alamo specifically. And for this one, we went primarily after the reload to make that one faster. So the reloads went from 8.2 seconds to just 14 seconds. So it should be able to just like get more rounds in faster. That should help set itself a little bit more further apart from its other Romero cousins. And then lastly, we have the Haymaker. And on the Haymaker, we also reduced the reload time for full reload from 21.8 seconds to 18.2 seconds. So just a small speed up just to make sure you can get your rounds in just a little bit faster.
But we also made some changes to the flame rifle, which are a bit more significant. So
yeah, so in general, we are very happy with the flame rifle. I think you guys really appreciated the balance we struck with it in terms of its power level. So it doesn't become too powerful against PvP, but very meaningful also in the PvE side. So in general, though, what we felt is that you just can't do long enough bursts with it. So in general, the barrage duration was just a bit short. So we increased the oil capacity inside the weapon just a little bit so that you can just keep the fire button pressed just a little bit longer. I think it's going to be roughly about half a second that you can shoot longer. And we kind of offset this a little bit on the PvE side also with the reduced damage so that like you still melt through a meathead quite quickly, but it just takes a little bit more fuel to do so, a little bit more time. But since you have more fuel overall, it is pretty much still the same result. It just feels a bit nicer. We also made some fixes to the pumping animation, and what it means is that you can interrupt the reload by just pressing the fire button or the aim button, etc. However, that only worked if you started the reload with the R button. If you started the pumping with the X button, which is also possible, then it wouldn't allow you to interrupt. So that felt a bit awkward. We fixed that, so now it's the same regardless of which button you want to use in order to get into the pumping state.
Awesome stuff, Dennis. And that is for the weapon balance side, but we also made a pass on the tarot card.
Yeah, so let's have a look at some of the cards we've changed. So the sun, we changed the effect duration from 60 to 90 seconds, so you get a lot more time now. 50% boost on its effect duration. We felt that while it was very powerful and very good, it was also very situational. And the moment you put that in and then you still didn't directly charge in or do your thing because maybe your teammate got down right as you opened the door or some other thing happened, it like the effect was basically gone because you couldn't really use it in that time. So we hope that by just adding a little bit more time on top, like the 90 seconds instead of 60 seconds, it becomes a bit more reliable to use. On the Magician, now the place decoys, they also trigger the red clue effects, and you also have the red boss whispers for enemy teams being in proximity. So for those who like to meme around and be in the shadows, like you can use that kind of like really mess with people. So let's see and hear what you guys think about that one. The world card now grants you 1 clue reward per boss target is covered. What does it mean? I mean, the world kind of reveals all of the clues basically and tells you where is the boss. However, you didn't get anything from it. So if you're running Conduit, for example, you didn't really get any of the stamina benefits from this one. So now at least every time you have a boss target to reveal, at least you get 1 clue step of rewards attached to this one. So you can still make a decision like, do you just manually get the first one and then play the card and you have like 2 of those rewards, or like 2 times the stamina boost, but you just don't get the full amount, but at least 1 step more towards actually getting some reward out of it. So you might not be as angry anymore about your friends kicking in that card right before you wanted to get Conduit started. Then the next one is the Tower card, and that just does a bit more increased damage against boss targets now, just becomes a bit more reliable, just like to quickly finish that boss, and especially the wild targets, you'll see that one having a strong effect because it instantly kills them now. So if you're really unhappy about having to fight some of the wild targets or an enemy rolls up, this one definitely gets the job done quickly, so good to have a tower around. So in general, we also have the tarot cards now found at specific points of interest. What I mentioned earlier is that our new Burnt Convoy event location, we always have a Empress card and a Chariot card. And in a similar way, many of the other custom locations we have, like, you know, the Clockmaker with the Destiny Dial supply point, or the Postal supply point, each of those will have now specific cards that can spawn there. The fullest, again, you can get from the patch notes, but it also makes sense now to see, okay, oh, what did the scouting map reveal this time around? Oh, it's a Clockmaker wagon. I want to go there because it has the one card I really like. Like, so these type of tactics now become something that's more predictable for you guys. It's not just fully random.
And on the balancing side of things, we still have a bigger pass for monster balance.
Yes, so on the NPC AI side, we also did a pass there. So many monsters are now a bit weaker to poison damage, including the Immolator, which was still killable, but it took quite a lot of shots. So the only advantage you really had using poison ammo against the Immolator was that it wouldn't burst, but it still was kind of like consuming quite a lot of ammunition. So a bit of balancing there. It's not completely reversing what we changed like a couple years back, where the Immolators before that were almost instantly dying, so we still wanted to keep a bit of them there, but it should be overall a bit fairer, a bit easier to bring him down. However, the Immolator still remains immune to poison clouds if they run through those. Keep in mind though that if you want to kill an Immolator, you use a choke cloud. That's what the professionals know. In general, also burning AIs, like if you kill like a grunt with fire, like they actually now cause a bit of burning damage in the surroundings during the death animation. So you just want to be careful where you kill them, because maybe next to the barrel they blow up now. Not just only the ones carrying the torches, but now everything that burns can do a bit of damage. So just want to be careful around that a little bit more. It's not too severe, but it just feels a bit more better integrated into the sandbox. And also we now have a change on the Immolators where they cause just some very minor 1 point of charcoaling damage with their regular attacks. So obviously if they're burst and on fire, then they already do that anyways. But now this is just the one little charcoaling, have a bit of sizzling as they hit you. Like they still need quite a lot of hits before you even would start burning, but still it's something to keep in mind out. And the way to get rid of that obviously is like if they're in a wet state, then they're soaked and they wouldn't be able to do this. We also added a lot of new ambient idle break animations to some of the monsters, so they feel a bit more alive. So things like monsters kind of like sniffing, digging a little bit, like gnawing at their arms and stuff like that. So there's a new rich set of things that you'll see our monsters do as they're just idling around. So yeah, also something for you guys to explore a little bit more in detail what it all includes.
Awesome. I can't wait to see those animations as well. But we have some other bigger changes in the update as well, other than the balancing changes. So let's start off with some updates to our player profile customization, which we introduced in the last patch.
Yeah, so player profile updates includes like new weapons and ammo badges. So I think I have a list here as well, quickly that I want to talk to you about. So it's mostly about getting you, for example, all the different ammo types as their own little badge. So if you really want to focus on, I don't know, incendiary ammunition or high velocity or penny shot, or you can do that now. You can kind of put it on your badge, show the progress you've made with those. You also have some of the scarce weapons now in there. So like you get your wildland, your homestead, the flame rifle, the shredder, that you can also like show your mastery with. And on top of that, we also have some of the variants that we didn't cover before. I think notably like the bayonets, riposte, and claws, the maces and traumas, as well as the apertures and the precision versions. They are all their own little categories now. So if you really feel strong about any of those, you can now make them part of your player profile and show your progress on those. In general, it's a system that we're still growing, so bear with us as we still don't have all of the hunters with their respective avatars. I know that for some of you guys that can be very painful, because obviously you want to show the hunter you really like, but rest assured we add more and more and more of those as we go. It's just a system that will grow over time, and obviously then becomes maybe a bit more relevant once your favorite hunter is also in there.
And of course, we have been focusing on player onboarding in the recent patches as well. And we do have some changes in this one as well for new players.
Yeah, so if you're a new player starting Hunt for the first time and going through the tutorial, afterwards you are in the trainee mode. And this is like the specific phase where your hunters not yet die permanently. Everything is a bit more forgiving, and during that time, as you also fight against some of the hunter bots, for example, we make sure we introduce monsters now a bit more gradually. So you won't find like a concertina armored right in the first mission. It's just a bit of grunts, and then we step by step, as you go for more and more matches, we're going to introduce them like new enemies in there. What makes sense to not overwhelm new players and just give them a chance to take all the other stuff in, because they usually are still always like trying to figure out, where am I, what's this map, where do I have to go, and if they're getting attacked by some monsters which might require some very special ways to kill them, it can be very frustrating. So just want to make sure this is an easier onboarding experience for everybody. And in addition to that, we also went to the hunter bots, which now, go to the next one. Which now scale difficulty a little bit as well per level. So initially, like, they will be very forgiving, and then as you encounter them through like a couple matches during your onboarding phase, they become a bit more of a threat along the way. So again, easing the player into the PvP aspect as well, so that it doesn't become like from too easy to then fighting your first player hunters too hard, I think is very important.
Yeah, just to highlight it again, this is only available until rank 11 in the training mode where new players are. And let's talk about something that may be very helpful for new players, but it's also something the community has been asking for since we introduced the shooting range. So now we are having some very cool changes.
Yeah, this one is super exciting as well, that we now have basic hunter bots on the shooting range. So they're going to walk up and down and you can use them for target practice. So this is something that many of you guys have been asking for a long time, to be able to kind of train and practice leading targets, leading shots. So we use the hunter bots, but obviously they will not fight back. You can activate those at specific points in the shooting range and then start moving around, and they will display the damage numbers above, etc. They will not actually fall down and die, but you actually understand how much damage you did, and you can use that for continuous firing. But yeah, it's a very nice way of practicing at various distances against moving targets, and just get a feel for that.
And we do have a video to showcase this as well in action, so let's look at the new shooting range changes.
As you can see here, there's like an interaction point now. There's multiple of those across the map, across the shooting range, and then once you activate that, you see these guys running, doing their thing, doing their target practice, and yeah, you can bring them down, learn from that, try things out, try different weapons, and get a feel for it. Like even have them like the very distance. Like this is one of the most important things to train. Like people walking across water at slower speeds than normal. I usually miss those leading shots because I always lead too much. Yeah, you can really show off there as well. And of course, you can do this together with your friends in a shooting range. You can go there together from the same lobby and try things out there. Like this shows you like the different direction points. So some of them on the roof or in specific angles there. So, and you can obviously just like shut them off as well. So for example, if you just want to play and mess around with your friends a little bit to do some heavy death matching, you can do that without them, of course.
And this is not the only feature which has been requested by the community a lot, and the next one is a big one. So let's talk about a brand new invite system that's coming in this update.
Yeah, so this is something that I'm so happy we finally have a chance to roll out. We're introducing now a new lobby code invite system. And this is a system that allows you to generate a code and then give that over to your friend so they can end up in the same lobby with you. Now this only works on the PC realm, so if you're a Steam player, you can now have your Windows PC Windows Game Store players like form a party with you. Better now, not prevents, is that where before you had to be really lucky to match with your friends. For example, if you were on Xbox and they were on PlayStation, if you wanted to play together, you had to use the random matchmaking and be very lucky to kind of find each other. This has changed now. You can just pass on the code and you can play together, and this is like kind of making it so much nicer for you to kind of play with friends. And yeah, same on the PC side, where if you have PC Game Store players, they can just play with you if you're on Steam, and vice versa. So I think a huge quality of life improvement. Really happy that we had a chance to finally roll this out. And if you do these type of invites, they're also persistent. So like in a similar way as if you were to invite your friends normally, like you stay together after the round, so you don't have to paste these codes over and over again. And you can even send multiple of those invites via the code, and then it's a first come first serve. So it might even be interesting maybe for some of the content creators out there, if you want to play with community, etc. You can do that now by just passing on the code and then just like see who joins first for some community day stuff. So I think it's a really cool potential behind that one. And obviously you can always reset the code, generate a new one, etc. and then have some control about this.
Yeah, since I already see some confusion in the chat, just to reinforce, the invites are currently between the PC Steam and PC Windows version, or Xbox and PlayStation. So
yeah, you cannot cross-play across these platforms. You stay either within consoles or within PC.
Yeah, and we do have a video to showcase how this actually works in action, so let's look at that too.
As you can see here, like now you open up the side menu and you can set your party to like, oh, look, trios. Open up the side menu and then you see all the control you have there about like generating these codes. They're also hidden by default, so like again for content creators, like you don't necessarily give away your codes all the time. Gives you a chance to kind of switch scenes, etc. Pass them on, and then like the other player can just use the same sidebar and enter their code, and then if they match, well, they go into exactly that game. So I think it gives you a lot of control to play with friends now, which we didn't have before. So I'm really happy that this is a right step in the right direction of just improving like social interactions.
Just a note about the icons as well, that players on console, when you invite, let's say you're playing on Xbox and you invite the PlayStation player, you won't be seeing a PlayStation logo, but like a more generic icon.
It's like a monitor icon. I think it's the same already on live right now, so I think most console players are probably aware, just like to call it out. Yeah, like that doesn't mean you're playing with a PC player, it just means you're playing with the other console.
Yeah, really excited for this. I saw chat was like, wow, no way, yo. So
it's a big one for me as well. I'm super happy we finally had a chance to put this out. I've been working on this for quite some time now, and yeah, like give us your feedback on this one. I want to see what you think, and yeah, maybe like reach out to those friends on other platforms and maybe invite them for some games.
Yeah, finally you can actually play together and not just with random matchmaking on consoles. But on the UI side, we also have some other cool improvements made. So let's take a look at those.
Yeah, its first thing is the equipment skin pagination. So like it's a quality of life improvement that many of you have been longing for quite some time. So we're super happy about bringing that now into the new UI as well. And I think it's better to show than to tell. So let's just have a look what it actually means.
There we go. Almost.
Alright, so as you can see now, you have like the chance to just like in your inventory as you browse through your weapons to equip your hunters, just like select the skins you want, like what cosmetic skins I have. You see the how many there are, and you can quickly cycle through them. So just bringing back that quality of life approach, which many of you guys really missed from before. So super happy about getting it back in, and should make it a lot easier. Just like find the right skins for the hunters and equip your hunters appropriately.
Really cool. But we also did another bigger change, which is the redesign of the hunter screen.
Yeah, so like the hunter screen has been redesigned. If you remember, in the past we had like both a roster screen where you could select the different hunters, and we had like another hunter screen, which was about the details of the selected hunter. And now we have like a hunter screen that has a cleaner layout. The grid is better aligned on the left side, it's easier navigation. You also have the empty slots are now clearly visible as empty slots. So just a little visual update just like clears up the whole thing, makes it much easier directly from that one screen. So again, this is like one image here just to show you before you dive closer. As you see all your hunters on the left side, your active roster. On the right side, you have the paper doll, like all the inventory pieces around it, and their weapons, equipment, the traits. And you can do all the modifications right from there, and just makes the whole thing a lot easier to use and access, and get like the next hunter stood up right after the mission. That was the last one.
Again, really happy to see chat being very happy about this. So awesome.
We like making like making the chat happy.
Very much so. Very much so. And they will be very happy when we talk about the new monster coming up in a bit. But before that, let's talk about some of the bug fixes.
Yeah, some of the highlights we have in there as well. So just some of the general bug fixes. Like one of the focus points for us was with this update to kind of bring down the crashes a lot. And with that, we also focus a lot on the PlayStation crash rates, which was just a bit higher than on the other platforms. So like that's one of the things we really had like some really good traction on. We also fixed several locations across the maps where people could get stuck permanently, which is always super frustrating, obviously, as you will lose your hunter then. We also fixed an issue where the tower cards did not work against the Bile Weaver X, like sometimes you used the card, but X were still everywhere, so like this type of stuff. And then we also fixed an issue where the game mode reverted to Bounty Hunt. So this is for those of you who really like playing Bounty Clash or Swords of Iron, just coming out of a successful round or not so successful round, you always had to kind of reset back to the right state. So this saves it now correctly, and it stays within the game mode.
Let's also highlight some gameplay related bug fixes too.
Yeah, like some more fixes more on the gameplay side. We fixed an issue where poison clouds could still kind of kill you on a revive even if you had an antidote shot. So this was like a problem we've been dragging around for quite some time now. Super frustrating because you should be safe and just be able to stand up, but because you got the damage first before it checked whether you should even get the damage, like it resulted in these frustrating moments. So very happy to kind of have that one out of the basically out of the way and finally fixed. We also fixed an issue where the water devils could spawn in Roger's area, which was obviously super frustrating because you have to be in the water in order to draw Roger out, and if the devils are there at the same time, it just very frustrating. Usually just give up. So that's fixed. We also had a look at the assassin that could get stuck and kind of bug out in a corner while in swarm mode. So overall it should be a bit more responsive, and you see like the bosses fail a little bit less. And then lastly, we also ensure that the traps are now are no longer counting towards the furthest kill distance stat on your player profile cards. So all of you who gamed this successfully over the last months, kudos to you, but that time is over now. And of course, there's going to be many more bug fixes in the patch notes for you guys to look at.
Yeah, and now that we put out a lot of fires, let's talk about something that's...
Yeah, we also started a couple of new fires, so here we go. Let's talk about the Fire Breather, a new monster. So the Fire Breather is, he's found kind of like around the grunts. It's not really a grunt, it's not really an emulator, somewhere in between that. So let's talk a bit more about what that means. So in general, like it's a ranged enemy, like he spews fire from a distance, he has this long range fire breathe attack. Obviously there's some anticipation before he does, so he's gonna stand still, etc. But like you don't want to be in the way when that happens. Also, like he is kind of vulnerable in a similar way as the emulator is. So you want to be careful with like slashing and piercing and any sorts of like stabbing around this guy, because if you do so, then he will erupt some flames. He's not going to blow up exactly like the emulator does. So it's not going to be as severe, but still you don't want that to happen ideally. So you want to be extra careful around him when you dispatch him, because he might also just like give you that last fiery breath as you kill him, depending if you hit him, for example, in the upper torso or in the head.
So why don't we take a look at it in the game, how it actually looks?
Yeah, it's really cool. So like as you can see already, like he's very more of a humanoid person. It's not completely just embers and brimstone. Yeah, the distance you want to be extra careful. That flamethrower is just brutal. That he's spewing out those flames. He's going to be affected by the water bottle in a similar way. That kind of dies from it. However, in the wet state, so when you, for example, choke him or he's wet, like he would just temporarily only be able to not use his ranged attack. So you want to make sure you can use that against him. So you see like throwing the choke bomb there. He kind of goes off and out for a short moment, but the moment he's out, he actually starts again. So you want to really carefully use those moments. It takes a bit longer for him to regain that ability, the range attack, if you use the wet state. Now, in general, as you can see here, depending on where you step and attack him, like he kind of like has this final breath burst to the top. Not only does it obviously reveal your position quite a bit because it's very visible, but also like there's fire around it, etc. So you just want to ideally back away after you stab him. You can always save like the bars if you're careful, even a 25er. Just be careful around this guy. Maybe just prefer to take him out with a ranged attack or with a blunt attack.
I still cannot wait to see the clips of players facing it for the first time, because it's always fun when we have a new monster out there.
He's cool, he's brutal, but like what I really appreciate him the most is like that he can kind of hide amongst the grunts a little bit, and that makes him very sinister because you don't necessarily expect him there, and all of a sudden he turns around and goes like, oh there, and move away now. So really interesting how he breaks up some of the patterns and behaviors.
Now that we talked about the new monster as well, which I know a lot of people have been waiting for, we do have some other updates for the community, starting with the Fair Play Task Force. A little update on that.
Yeah, so in general, our Fair Play Task Force, this is basically where we talk about like cheating bans, just making sure that you guys have a fair and good experience playing the game. So over the last 10 months, we had 10,569, if I can read this correctly on the prompter, permanent bans issued for cheating. We also had 358 additional bans for in-game violations, such as harassment, bug abuse, and teaming. These in-game reports, especially, they're super important and key for us because they're an investigation tool we can use to kind of like add context. So it's super important that you guys give us detailed reports to help us out with and fill in as much detail as you can with these reports. We look at them. They are very, very important for us, especially when we do like manual looking at certain reports. So please continue doing so. Like it really helps us to act fast and keep the game fair for everyone. Yeah, and we will have a blog coming up in the coming weeks about this topic, so you can see it in a bit more detail. But the Fair Play Task Force is working hard, and of course cheating is a very important issue for us, so we are happy to share some data with you this time. Expect more transparency moving forward.
Definitely.
I won't eat
fun thing happening with the 2.7 is a partner preview event.
Oh yeah. So we will have like a partner preview on 2 days actually, on March 13th as well as March 14th. So there's like Friday and Saturday coming up now, respectively at 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central European time. And what it means is that like hunt partners and content creators, they can stream update 2.7 for the first time live, kind of preview this and kind of see what's actually in there and talk about it, see what's good, what's bad, what I like, what I prefer, and just have the conversations going. So yeah, go and watch your favorite content creators, experience the update before release, and tune in on Twitch and follow our socials for the actual announcements there.
Yeah, and of course you can check out our website at hardshowdown.com/partners, so you can see our partners. And with that, we came to the end of the update discussion and the event as well.
Yeah.
So let's dive into a Q&A segment. So chat, please ask your questions. And yeah, I will also open chat here on my side and see what we can answer. So please give us just 1 second.
Quite a lot of questions coming in. That's good.
Yeah, chat is very active, so that's always great. Okay.
You start?
Oh yeah, I'm opening it up.
I can reiterate maybe just the dates again because like so. So we did have a mistake on the stream assets where it says like it would end at May 13th, But actually, Devil's Trail is running from March 18th, so that's next week, Thursday, I think, towards June 10th, not May 13th, but we run until June 10th.
Yeah, I see questions about that is Inferno coming back, and we actually talked about it if you paid a bit of attention. So Inferno is returning in April 15th to be exact. So keep an eye on that. We will of course have more information around what is happening there, but Inferno will indeed return.
And of course the 18th is not Thursday, but it's the Wednesday next week.
Yeah. Exactly a week from today, right?
Yeah, the 18th is next week, Wednesday. Yes,
Yeah.
a week from now. Soon.
Again, I see a question that asked about the 15-player lobbies and what was the decision there.
So we do have a very detailed blog post. So prefer like to just like check out the blog post. Maybe like we can post a link again in the chat in the meantime. We have all information there. Overall, it was a mixed response. However, a clear preference for how we improved and changed the trio games. Not so much though for the duo games, and there were a couple of pain points around it. So yeah, if you're interested in the details, please check out the blog post. Lots of data and points and reasoning in there. So I think it's really cool and definitely a good way for us to kind of like explain the reasoning behind these things and have a very open conversation with you guys. Because it does not only matter that you give us the feedback, but we also want to share what in general the community is thinking by like giving the results back to you.
Alright, hold on, I'll be right back.
Yeah, of course, questions about cheaters. We try to cover this in the Fair Play Task Force update again. This is very important to us, and we will have a blog with a bit more details.
It's an ever-evolving fight, right?
Yeah, of course.
Shield versus Sword. Constantly monitoring that. We're constantly working on this. We're working with our partners as well. But yeah, expect like more information or from the Fair Play Task Force about this soon.
So Dennis, I'm seeing a lot of questions related to MMR. So are there any plans for improvements on this?
So, I mean, it's super important for us to say is like, we see the concerns. We see what people are complaining about. We're looking actively into solutions for that stuff. We have some stuff in the works, but we can't talk about yet exactly what that means and when we can roll this out. But like, it's a very, very important topic, and we understand the pain points it creates for some of you.
And of course, one big topic here is asking about the ping and ping limits. So Dennis, could you touch on that for a second, just because a lot of people...
Again, also we're seeing the comments. It's a very important discussion also internally for us. We were hoping with our initiative that we had like a year ago, about more than a year ago now, about the high ping situation, that we could get some easy wins there. Unfortunately, the situation turned out to be much more complicated, especially considering things like local VPN, etc. So we're still working on a solution. We also don't want to create any accidental issues where maybe people playing from Australia all of a sudden can't play with their friends on the West Coast anymore, or issues with like the South Africa players where they could play. So it's a very complicated topic. We can't give you the answers here right now, but rest assured this is super important for us, and we're continuing on this topic at all. Like internally, it's a very, very big conversation point.
And of course, as always, the people asking about a new boss or new monsters. Well, in this update, we do have a new monster coming out. We just talked about the Fire Breather, and of course, new bosses and new battle targets. So always an interesting topic for us, but we cannot just share anything right now about that.
I'm still curious to see what you think about the Fire Breather.
Yep. Oh, again, a lot of people asking, where is the invite? What about console invites? We actually covered this, and it was a big point, so you probably missed it. But Dennis, could you just recap what that is?
So with this update, we're introducing lobby code invites. It's a new way for you to play with friends. And what you can do is, like, if you're on Steam or if you're in the Windows Game Store, you can now play with other PC players on a different platform by using the invite code system. In the same way, if you're on PlayStation and you have, for example, friends on Xbox, you can now also invite them into the same matches and vice versa. So like within the console realm and also within the PC realm, but not across, you'll be able to now give invites out. So if you have friends on other platforms that you would really like to play with, and so far the only chance you had was using like the random matchmaking in the hope to ending up in the same lobby, you can now use that system to really get reliable into matches together. And yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for you guys to just reach out to your friends, play with them.
Yeah, actually, like a follow-up question to that that I just saw is like asking about randoms. What happens when you have like a let's say a random third in your party, or just making a group with randoms, do the lobbies still persist, or how does that work?
So at the moment, like what we mentioned earlier is like that if you use the lobby code invite system, the lobbies will persist, so you don't have to retype the code over and over again after every match. What it doesn't change is like if you play with randoms, etc., because you don't know what these randoms want to do maybe next. So that's at the moment we haven't resolved that particular point. We've been focused on the on the lobby code invites and ensure that this is like the smooth and less intrusive way of like reaching out to friends, setting out these codes, etc. Again, like what I want to emphasize as well is like it's a great way for content creators also to maybe to have like more engagement with their community by just passing the respective code along, and it's a first come first serve basis who actually ends up in your game. So could be very interesting maybe for some of you to play around with. It's definitely like a new tool at your disposal.
So some questions about previous battle passes returning.
Yeah, you want to answer that one?
Sure. So yeah, we had like some great feedback with the Legends Return that we ran during the last event, and we will always try to find ways to return
them, bring them back. Yeah.
Favorite items, but this is something we are like working on, and we'll share more information soon how we exactly do it. So just please stay tuned on that.
Yeah.
Dennis, this one is definitely for you, and I know we cannot really say it, but like, can we expect any new weapons or variants in the future?
I mean, we are a shooter, so I very much hope so. Nothing we can talk about right now, but I'm pretty sure we have more Arsenal options available in the future.
Also, like, just general question about the new structure and how events work. So do we have back-to-back events now? And maybe you could also like just talk about the beats feed.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So in general, like what we've been starting to do since the second last event is trying to get more into like a continuation where we actually have like them back-to-back. However, the focus has also shifted a little bit within the events where we in past days we very often had everything go from the beginning, right? You had a massive update, and then that had to be the thing you want to play for the next 2 or 3 months. We're now focusing a lot more about like making sure there's also additional cool things coming along the way. So we're going to move more towards this monthly update cadence as well, where just like new things happen. Like an example of that one has been the Ballweaver compounds and the Flame Rifle in January as a mid-event update beat for the Murder Circus on Core. And you guys really appreciate that one we saw. So it's something we want to do more of, give you guys like some new things, maybe some pieces return, some new mechanics come in, just new ways for you to get excited about and have a chance to kind of try out.
Actually, that you mentioned Flame Rifle, I just saw a question asking about the scarce weapons like the Shredder and Flame Rifle. Like, are they in the game now, or do they return? Or
yes.
How does it work?
So scarce weapons as well as like specific traits, etc. That stuff can always appear. It will depend a little bit on maybe an active event. If you say like, hey, there's a higher chance or no chance at all to find specific things. But in general, if you have found them before and you still have a hunter with them, or you have them in your arsenal, they don't go away. So if you have, for example, like still a hunter lying around, like from the Murder Circus and Core, which has like the Blade Mancer trait on them, that stays. You can just continue using it. You just might not know when you get the next time a chance to actually get one. In a similar way, the scarce weapons, like they were very prominent in previous events, maybe they become a bit more rarer now to find. Like, so again, we play around with the sources and how quickly and how often, how frequently and how reliably most often you can get some of those pieces, but none of that stuff goes away. Everything stays in the game now. So if you have shredders lying around in your arsenal, well, go use them. You might also find some of them in the future by just killing people that had them, because they brought in theirs and now they're yours. So it's a cool new way for you to experience some of that more limited content pieces as well, and kind of adds kind of a bit of value and also a bit of like pressure maybe to not die this round because you don't want to lose that.
I see a lot of questions since we talked about the cross-platform invites, about cross progression, and we currently do not have plans for
at the moment, we don't have anything on that front. What's important is that the lobby code invites, they are respectively amongst the consoles or amongst the PC platforms, but not across. So if you give like a friend on PlayStation, if you're on Xbox, that's invite codes, they can now join your lobby. But that doesn't work, for example, if you're on console with a Steam account.
There's a question about the Chariot trait. Will it still lock and unlock extracts?
Yes. So in general, what it does is it will give you not only the revealing information, like what we do in this event, like we can show you where the exits are, in addition to like obviously like all the other ways of finding and revealing them by banishing the boss or by using the scouting map. But they also still do the flipping mechanic where they kind of reverse. It's important pieces like that. If you use the chariot, you know what has changed and you know what the locations are to go out for. You might not know, however, maybe what you changed it from if you haven't revealed them before.
A question about the burnt supplies. Do the traits at those POIs also disappear after first use?
So in general, that depends on the type of trade. So sealed trades, like trades you have to spend pledge marks on, they usually stay. Like they don't go away. The regular trades, the ones that you might find randomly in the world, or the ones dropped by the wild targets or some of the bigger monsters, those are the ones that will fade out. So if you have a sealed trade like all ears at the tower, for example, everybody can always pick that one up. It never fades away because there's a cost to it. Like it's kind of like sealed and grounded in reality, maybe differently, could be an explanation. So they will not go away. The regular trades, they're the ones that after the first time you interact with them, they start fading out. So over the next 90 seconds, you better coordinate with your teammates that everybody has a chance to get them if they're important to you. Otherwise, they will fade away, which means, however, that if you go and hunt the Meathead, if you go hunt the Brutes, if you go hunt Roger or the Hellborn, the reward is yours primarily. And someone coming there like 10-15 minutes later, they will not find the trait if you have used it. Of course, if it wasn't interesting to you, none of you have interacted with it, it might still be there.
And with that, I think we answered most of the questions. Do you see any more you would like to reply to? Especially in the very end there, or only the last ones?
I think we covered the big ones that I saw.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think we're through.
Oh, I see a question that I can actually answer about the Twitch drops. So this time around, we don't have Twitch drops for 2.7, but of course, during the year, this is something that will still be happening. But just please keep an eye on it and follow us on socials for more information about that. Last year, we also had some really cool campaigns. So of course, this is something we want to continue. So with that, let's plug all the cool channels we have. So of course you can follow us on Facebook at Hunt Showdown, on Instagram at Hunt the Game, on TikTok Hunt Showdown Official, on YouTube just Hunt Showdown. You can also follow the Crytek pages. We are on X, even in like local channels if you want to find us. And thank you for joining us for this stream. I hope we managed to answer most of your questions as well. As always, please keep the questions coming that we may have not been able to answer now, and we will try to get back to you as much as possible. Dennis, what a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I mean, I'm super excited about like what we were able to show you guys today. So yeah, the next thing for you obviously is like tune in for the partner previews on Friday and Saturday, and you might get some first glimpse of all of that in motion, and with like comments and obviously feedback from your favorite content creators. So go for it.
The event is coming next Wednesday. Just to reinforce that, please read the patch notes where all the cool details and all cool stuff we've talked about it, but there's more, like way more bug fixes, way more smaller tweaks that you may want to learn about before the event. And I think with that, we are done for today. So
yes,
thank you so much for joining us. It was a lot of fun, and see you next time around.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Alright, that's pretty cool. A lot of good changes coming in, right? I'm excited. I know nobody else on the channel is, but I'm excited. Yeah, I will not be dealing with that. Okay. That's pretty cool.
Find motor function in people who are living with MS. What did the participants do in this study, and do you see the outcome?
The program that was developed by the company was called Moving MS, and so again, there were, group sessions with about 10 people with MS, and they were assigned each a dancer to work with them. And for about an hour, they would again interact, and there was a facilitator for each session that would them. And you could see the progression of exercises. I witnessed some of these sessions, and that was incredibly energizing, incredibly positive. And so, the group got comfortable together because, everybody's a little shy, moving in front of others. But once everybody realized they could do whatever they, felt like doing, following the prompt within their abilities, it's unfortunate that many people with MS, feel that it's difficult to go and exercise or do other activities in the community because, while they, may be limited in the way they can participate in it. Here, really, there was emphasis on finding the ability in everyone, and they could adapt, the movement to what they could do. They could do it seated on a chair or standing up, for example. And as they got more tired, they may, revert from standing to sitting, etc. And really, the participants reported a lot of enjoyment. They reported that it had a good effect on their emotional health, particularly, and that it got them moving, right? And so that they were now enticed to continue on their own and maybe try to engage in dance or other form of exercise. And unfortunately, as can happen, the company we worked with just closed its doors, on the eve of its 25th anniversary. That was very sad. But the idea lives on, and what we've learned from it, we certainly are looking for other companies to partner with to continue offering this program and growing it based on what we learn along the way.
Studies have reported the positive effects of music therapy in people with chronic neurological conditions like MS. In fact, advances in neuroscience have led to an approach called neurologic music therapy. Can you tell us about neurologic music therapy and how it works?
Thank you for this question. It's an area that I'm not an expert on, actually, but I've had many interactions with experts in neuromusic therapy. So this is a subspecialty, if you wish, of music therapy, which is actually, sanctioned by specific training, where music therapists will use techniques that have been proven to be effective, and sometimes, proven to be effective even at the brain function level. Doing these colorful images of how the brain activates when you send the music signal or other. So these techniques have been validated, and then they can be used by a music therapist, where they would use their prior knowledge as well to specifically address people with neurologic conditions. To give you an example, rhythmic auditory stimulation is using rhythmic music to promote better movement, particularly
almost a year to get
better gait, better walking, right? And it's been shown to work for Parkinson's disease. There's some evidence that it may help also with MS and with people who've had a stroke. So again, while people listen to rhythmic music, you will see that their ability to walk may improve. And then if they keep doing it over and over, in some cases you may see even a lasting benefit that would be shown even if the person is not listening to the rhythmic music at the time they walk. So that's an example. Another example is modified melodic intonation therapy, where a music therapist will use singing as a way for people who have difficulty with speech to be able to circumvent the speech difficulty by singing sentences or singing words. And there are several others of these techniques that are being used by these trained neurotherapists.
We heard from Calvin. Calvin says He's heard that music therapy can positively impact mood, fatigue, speech, and cognitive function. Can you discuss some of these findings?
So, in MS
really
and in
hope that
other
chair
conditions,
actually
there
isn't
has been a report of improvements on all of these domains. I think we're still learning how to maximize these benefits and also how to do it the right way with the right person, right? We're all different, and our abilities, our tastes are different, so we're trying to understand if different types of music could have a different impact. I think that's the level of granularity that we haven't reached. But overall, there have been many reports saying that people, while they were engaging in music therapy, were reporting better emotional status, so better emotions, better mood. They were feeling that they were thinking more easily, and that they had more energy. I think we have already the preliminary evidence to support this in MS, and we're digging more and more. Now, the studies often will study a group of people, and at the individual level, we have many reports of people who derive benefit, and not only during studies, but also they continue doing it. I had the example of somebody who participated in some of my studies and after the fact kept using music during his exercise sessions because he said it kept his mind clearer, kept him more engaged with the exercise, and he derived more benefit and was in a better mood. So that's just one example among many.
I want to make sure we have a moment to talk about art therapy as well. Based on study outcomes, what are the benefits of art therapy for people who are living with MS?
There have been fewer studies on art therapy, and many of these studies were what we call case reports. So they were a report of one person or a few people, and then describing their benefits. In general, again, keeping in mind that art therapy is really a trained therapist using the arts as a way to engage with somebody and generate positive emotions. As a result, we've seen improved mood, improved emotions, also sometimes improved movement, ability to move. And so, if the art used is actually a form of art that requires movement, then through the engagement to perform this activity, then people can do movement that they maybe thought they couldn't do that well. And so by repeating it over and over with this positive engagement through the arts, then they had a better ability to move. We always have to be humble, when we discuss the benefits of any of our therapeutics, and that includes therapeutic arts. It doesn't work for everyone, doesn't work to the same degree for everyone. So it's a trial and error process until somebody finds really what jives with them and what engages them, and then what gives them the best benefits.
We heard from Josh, and Josh tells us he's a terrible artist. Josh, I can relate. But Josh is looking to try something new to help cope with his depression and anxiety. He's wondering whether you have to be good at art to participate in art therapy.
This is a great question, and one that I'm very passionate about. Art therapy is not going to art school. That means you can't flunk art therapy. That's not the point. The point is to take anybody where they are with their own abilities and limitations, and I could talk to you for an hour about my great limitations with the arts. For example, you wouldn't want me to sing because that would drive away many people who should be listening to that piece. But take people where they are, but also listen to them, understand what really engages them, and then get them, maybe learn a few basic techniques, and then have them create a piece of art or create their own, and then express themselves, and then talk about it, discuss around it. And that's what makes it special, that makes it unique. and that's what makes it therapeutic as well. And in the end, people are often amazed at what they've accomplished because they thought they really didn't do well with arts, that they had no talent. And then they discover actually that they can express themselves through the arts.
Bella tells us she wants to learn how to incorporate therapeutic arts into her MS treatment plan. She's wondering how to go about finding a program or finding things that she can even do at home. What suggestions do you have for Bella?
There are actually more and more resources for that. There are some videos online that one can find that explain how to engage with the arts. Some of them are actually made by art therapists and music therapists, and so they are by trained healthcare professionals. Others are not, but that doesn't mean they can't be helpful. One way to find actually therapeutic arts professionals in one's area is to contact a local hospital, because generally the therapists tend to work in hospital systems. Few of them work in an independent practice. There's also on the website for the organizations, the Music Therapy Association and the Art Therapy Association in the US. They have a website and they give a listing of their members in different areas. So that's a great way to be able to connect with art, music, and dance and movement therapists in a specific area. That would be really the kind of resources that I would use. Also word of mouth. Also maybe ask the MS Society. The National MS Society is a wonderful way to find resources in one's area. And I know that in my area, I learned of some arts-related programs that actually through the MS Society newsletter.
Well, you shared some very helpful and important insights about how therapeutic arts can deliver real benefits to people with MS. What would you say are the top 3 takeaways that you'd like our viewers to remember and to use?
I'd say my main takeaways would be that first, that engaging with the arts allows personalized health promotion at many levels. In medicine, we've moved from haven't moved. We've broadened our scope from, treating people who are sick to promoting health and keeping healthy. So engaging with the arts will allow that in a personalized way at many, many levels. Second, as we've discussed before, that deriving benefit from therapeutic arts does not require prior experience or prior training. That's very important. So anybody can benefit and anybody can enter at their own level. Finally, I would encourage everyone to seek out programs in your community, in local healthcare institutions. There are always more programs than we think, and they are not always widely advertised, and so it's sometimes word of mouth. But participating in these programs is very likely to promote benefits that will be lasting as long as we keep engaging with the activity.
Well, I want to thank everyone for some great questions today, and thank you, Dr. Beytoo, for joining us today.
Thank you. That was my pleasure.
Before we close, I want to remind you that the National MS Society's MS Navigator team is your best partner when it comes to connecting you to the very best information and resources on living with MS. You can reach an MS Navigator by phone, email, or through the Society's website by chat. For information and resources on MS, please be sure to visit the Society's website. You'll find research updates and news, information on connection programs like self-help groups and MS Friends. You'll hear about ways to get involved, and you'll find out about upcoming events that are taking place near you. Remember, you can connect with the National MS Society and others affected by MS on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I hope you'll join me every week on the Real Talk MS podcast, where I continue the conversation that we start here. You'll find Real Talk MS at realtalkms.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'd like to thank Dr. Beytoo for joining us today. Please remember that a recording of this webcast will be available at the Society's website at nationalmssociety.org/msexpert, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you'll join us at this same time for next week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. You can always find our upcoming program topics on the National MS Society's website. And now I have a favor to ask each of you. Getting your feedback on today's webcast is important. So if you're watching on Facebook Live, you'll see a link to a survey pinned to the comments section. On YouTube, you'll find that link in the program description. And on Twitch, you can find that link in the chat. Completing the survey makes a real difference. The information you provide helps us continuously improve, and it helps shape future webcasts. The survey just takes 1 minute, so I hope you'll take a minute to fill it out. On behalf of Dr. Francois Béthou and the National MS Society, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Please stay safe and make healthy choices. Welcome to this week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. I'm John Strum, and I'm the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with the news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways an MS can impact a family. Currently, I serve on the MS Society's Community Review of MS Research Committee. I'm a district activist leader and trustee for the National MS Society, and I chair the Society's California Government Relations Advisory Committee. The MS Society's Ask an MS Expert webcast is designed to give us a place for the MS community to connect and to connect you with experts who are ready to answer your questions on the topics that impact people affected by MS every day. Please feel free to post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. MS Navigators are online throughout today's program, answering those questions, connecting you to resources. Learning to live well with MS can sometimes feel like learning to live well while you're riding a roller coaster. And during that roller coaster ride, your priorities, motivations, and values can shift as you experience all the twists and turns of life with MS. These shifts can lead to feelings of loss of self or loss of purpose. My guest today is Dr. Evan Smith. Dr. Smith is a clinical assistant professor and rehabilitation psychologist, and he's a co-investigator on a National MS Society training grant that funds neuroimmunology fellowships. Dr. Smith specializes in identifying values to help live a more purposeful, satisfying life. Welcome, Evan. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, John. It's so nice to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to be invited to speak with y'all today.
Your work focuses on helping individuals find purpose and satisfaction by making choices that align with their personal values. This starts with understanding acceptance and commitment therapy. So let's start there. What is acceptance and commitment therapy, and how can it benefit someone living with MS?
Yeah, it's a great question. So acceptance and commitment therapy, or as it's kind of better known, ACT, it's an evidence-based therapy for several psychiatric diagnoses, including anxiety and depression, and experiences that affect people living with MS, like quality of life, stress, and pain. Often, when we're faced with adversity, we have this very well-intended instinct to change what's happening so that we feel better. But there are many situations that we didn't vote for, and yet they still happen. And there isn't quite a great problem-solved solution to what we can do better. This can leave someone feeling helpless or hopeless or anxious, and it might even lead people to avoid things that might bring them meaning in their lives. So with ACT, it aims to help people to feel more empowered, not to change their thoughts, their feelings, or their emotions related to their circumstances, but rather change their relationship with their thoughts, their feelings, and their emotions. And as it is with most behavioral-based therapies, for ACT to be useful, it requires the person who's seeking the type of change to be an active participant and to be recognized that every person living with MS is the world's foremost expert on themselves and their own lived experiences. So they will be the world's best expert on how to apply these strategies to themselves. I kind of find that for people living with MS, this type of approach is particularly well suited, since it can often lead folks to more strategically use their resources when resources might fluctuate week to week or even day to day, so that they become more skilled at living each day in a value-directed manner and adapt to the ever-changing circumstances that come with living with MS.
Committed action acknowledges the different parts of a situation that we can and cannot directly affect. We've heard from Sabrina, who tells us she lives with MS, which is an experience she did not want or consent to, and yet here she is. How can Sabrina better come to terms with her MS diagnosis?
I would first encourage Sabrina to consider that when someone's faced with a health condition that may come with significant challenges and discomfort, it's important to expect that negative emotions are natural and they're going to happen. The process of coming to terms with MS is personal, and the timeline can really vary from person to person depending on the person themselves and the socially constructed factors that are influencing them. But learning someone's own values can be a really important tool as you're faced with these challenges. When we think about values, they're not tangible. We can't reach out and touch them or see them or smell them. They're concepts about who we are and what we hold to be meaningful. They're not necessarily a destination or a goal, but more of like an ever ongoing framework and approach to daily living. They're not good or bad or right or wrong. They're just individualized preferences that tend to evolve over time. And just because, my values might not completely align with John's values and vice versa, it doesn't make either of us good or bad people. It's just these personal, strongly held preferences that tend to have evolved with our life circumstances. And usually what we find is that when looking at life through the lens of our values, it gives us greater flexibility on how we choose to approach every day.
Gary tells us he lives with primary progressive MS, and he's constantly worrying about the future. What are some strategies to help Gary feel more connected to the present moment?
Yeah, so Gary sounds like he might benefit from engaging in practices that are known to calm the mind and body. In particular, mindfulness is a practice that's intended to support someone's capacity to live in the here and now, despite these naturally occurring thoughts about our past or our future. Mindfulness is the practice of fully focusing in on the current experience without judgment and acknowledging the information that's available to us by focusing on our senses, so whether it's our breath or an object. And of course, everybody has different access to their senses, but some that come to my mind are taste, touch, sight, smell, and hearing. The expectation that when we're fully focused on this moment, our mind is going to wander. So the goal is not to stop our mind from wandering. The goal is to simply recognize that when our mind has wandered, we can acknowledge that and then gently redirect our attention back to what it is we're focusing on, whether it is, an object, our breath, or whatever else in our environment that we're.
Hi, Lumpy. I know work's been busy, and then I actually realized I spent like
in the context
an hour,
of your
and I
work,
was muted, and nobody was here to tell me the difference.
Motivation and engagement, and how can these principles be helpful to someone navigating MS?
So motivation is more of an internal process, whereas engagement is the degree to which we're putting our motivations into action. You can kind of think of it as how ready do you feel to actually do the thing in front of you, the task.
Like you missed.
People with MS are often confronted with choices.
You missed the dev stream for Hunt Showdown. I mean, unless you caught it, but
that can be really challenging.
I don't know what it costs for you on PlayStation, but we could actually play together on Hunt Showdown now.
Motivation tends to boil down into two main
the next
ingredients: confidence and importance. So when you're considering your own motivation about engaging in a particular choice or an activity, you can quickly assess your own confidence by asking yourself, on a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being I have no confidence and 10 being I'm absolutely certainly confident, how confident am I that I could do whatever it is this choice is asking of me? And if you find that your confidence is maybe somewhere in the middle, like a 5, you can then ask yourself, well, why did I say a 5 and not a 2? That really gets you thinking about all the assets that you're bringing to that circumstance. And it might lead you to find that there are even more assets that you're bringing that can help you to feel confident.
I have zero
On the flip
confidence in my
side,
abilities at this
you might
point.
also think, well, I'm at a 5. I'm not necessarily at a 10 in how confident I feel. I wouldn't ask myself what would move me to a 10, but rather what would move me to a 5.5. What would have to change right now so that I would feel? So on a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being, this isn't important at all to me, and 10 is, this is the most important thing I can do, how important
is how you express your why. How does this process help form values?
I don't know if it's my new dock or the chords I'm
when
using,
it comes to
but like
values, I might even think about it
every
in
few
kind of
minutes
a
it'll just go black,
reverse order.
but it won't like completely disconnect the
Knowing our
monitor.
most important and deeply held values
I don't
can
know
give
why
us
it's doing it,
insight
and it's pissing
into
me off
why
because I don't know which
something
thing I
is
need to return.
important or not so important. Why we may feel confident or not so confident. When we can link something that seems on its surface to be somewhat unimportant to one of our more important values, it tends to enhance our motivation to actually engage. So for example, I don't personally find it rewarding or meaningful that I take my trash out each Wednesday. And sometimes that motivation does not surpass my motivation to continue watching the TV show I'm watching, especially if I'm at the end of like a really compelling murder mystery series. However, if I were to really consider this and take a moment to recognize that it's not just taking the can of trash to the curb, but it's a demonstration of respect for my household, the people in it. It's an act of hygiene and health. There may be some room for me to enhance how motivated I am to pause the show and quickly take it out.
That would
Can you
not
tell
change
us
my
what the
mentality about
values
that at all.
compass is?
Yeah. So this is a bit of a metaphor, and sometimes it's helpful to think of values in terms of a metaphor. I think of values like a directional compass, north, south, east, and west. Knowing your most important values can serve as a guide to navigate the obstacles that arise on any journey. So if you think about a hypothetical map where you're starting at point A, and there's somewhere where you want to get to at point B, but the roads aren't necessarily drawn in, and you might be confronted with detours along the way. When you're facing one of those detours, you can examine your value compass, your constellation of values, and even if going in a direction that isn't a one-way direct line to point B, it's not accessible, the more that we make choices on a moment-to-moment basis that are in service of our core values, the greater the likelihood that over time we're going to get to point B as closely as possible.
Joanne tells us that she's always thought she had strong values, but has recently felt some shifts after being diagnosed with MS. Can our experiences change our core values?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as we experience and move through life, our circumstances, our commitments, our relationships and experiences change, and so naturally our values tend to evolve with those changes. My values from 15 years ago are not the exact same values that I hold today because they have evolved to meet the demands of my life that's changed. And it's not uncommon that a new diagnosis of MS and the functional changes that come along with that can lead someone to reconceptualize their values and reprioritize what's most important to them these days.
Keisha says she usually thinks of motivation in terms of achievement, like in school or at a job. Keisha doesn't work because of her MS, and that leads her to feel like she must be unmotivated. How can the value-based compass help Keisha understand what motivates her outside of her more typical understanding?
It sounds like Keisha is being faced with at least one important question, and the one I'm thinking of is, what do I do now that I'm not working or I'm in school? So this might be an opportunity for her to use her values compass to look at what options are available to her now and determine which choices that she could make that might feel meaningful. I often work with folks who have been in the helping professions, and while they didn't necessarily love or enjoy the paperwork or the time demands, or the stress, they certainly valued contribution and compassion. And those are two important values that, even when not in academia or working, could be affirmed in newly evolved ways. And I would encourage Keisha to become curious with those types of thoughts when they come up, and bring compassion to herself as she figures out that next chapter.
Well, I think you may have just demonstrated through example an answer to the question I'm about to ask you. I was wondering how our values work together with our goals.
Yeah, and they are closely linked. So your values tell you generally which direction you might bring you meaning, where you want to go. The goals themselves are the very specific way that you measure how you're going to get there to living the
Hey, Gilbert. Thank you for the like, sir.
So oftentimes we're making decisions about what to do.
Holy fuck, is this wrong?
Most important decisions we have, we can feel conflicted, and that's relatively common. That conflict is usually an indicator that two or more of our most important values are competing with each other. And again, that's not right or wrong or good or bad, but it's helpful to know that that might be the case when you're weighing your motivation of how you want to prioritize which goal you want to approach with your resources in this moment.
After being diagnosed with MS 5 years ago, Kevin says he often feels listless and wonders where his life is heading. He isn't sure what he values. What strategies are available to help Kevin identify his values?
Some people know their values pretty clearly, and even for them, it's worthwhile to check in with themselves every so often to make sure that their values are matching their lifestyle. For those who have less certainty, they can kind of think about times where they feel emotionally well and ask themselves, what's happening in this moment? Why was that meaningful to me? So an example might be, a person who uses their assistive device to navigate a pathway at their grandchild's baseball game, which allowed them to be there for longer. There's some value there that was meaningful to them. Maybe it was the value of their independence, or maybe their connection to their family that act allowed them to do. Alternatively, when feeling emotionally unwell, that could be a signal that something is happening that may be neglecting or violating a value that is meaningful to us. So, a common theme that I sometimes hear is we've got these very loving and well-intended family members who can't stop doing things for us, even as many times as we say, I've got this. And that can leave people feeling
I would love my family to do shit.
Perhaps this is a signal to us. What's going on here is a neglect for my value of independence. And through recognizing that, we might be even more skilled at articulating that to the people around us.
Juanita tells us that she thinks this concept sounds a little bit like a personality test. Is there an online test or maybe other resources available to help someone understand their values?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's certainly related concepts. I kind of suspect that values might be more susceptible to the changes that occur over the years and our circumstances over time. What Juanita might benefit from is, just a quick internet search, whatever browser they use, and type in values assessment. And what you're looking for is a relatively long list of single words that represent values. Assessment. So some examples of that would be
very important to
creativity or compassion, or independence, or safety, or love.
Those are
answers
if you find
for
different types of your personality.
40, 50, 60 values, you can then go through it and start to
and if you guys knew exactly what I was talking about, you're just
feel
as bad
is
as
most
I am.
meaningful and important to you these days, within the past couple of weeks as a start.
Mindy says her dad has MS, and while he's very important to her, Mindy lives quite far from her parents, and so she doesn't see him very often. This situation makes her sad, and Mindy's wondering if this is a misalignment between her values and her actions. So what would a strong alignment between values and actions look like for Mindy?
It sounds like there might be some value competition here. Again, very, very natural to happen. And it sounds like the values that I'm hearing might be something like caring, connection, and independence. So she cares about her father, yet she lives far away. sounds like at some point in her life, maybe she prioritized her independence as she's lived farther away. Though I'm sure naturally she's found ways to be caring and connecting with her father at a distance. Though as the circumstances sound like they've changed, she can now assess how she's really been affirming those values of connection and caring from a distance, and if the actions that she's currently taking are sufficient to feel that they're regularly being fulfilled. And if not, she could ask herself, what would be a 1% change that is accessible to me that I could do that would more embody my values of connection and caring? So for example, maybe she currently calls her father once a week. What might it be like if she were to video call him twice a week? That might be a 1% change.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the concept of competing values, because we have a question on that from Lewis. He says he understands his values, but has recently felt that his values, some of them I assume, are competing. Lewis wants to know how he can make room for both or prioritize one competing value over the other.
Yeah. Again, it's just so common. The more important a decision is, the more likely it is we have values that are going to be in competition. Most decisions are not just either or, black or white. There's a lot of gray area. So, we assess and prioritize typically on a moment-to-moment basis. And it's possible that there's an option that we didn't initially consider that honors each of those competing values in a somewhat compromised way. So for example, if we have the value of safety that's important to us and independence, those can often come at odds with each other. Let's say someone has a goal to get to their mailbox and retrieve their mail, but they have some unsteady gait. One way to stay safe is to not leave the house, just stay on the couch, but that might neglect their value of independence. Now, they could also try their very best to get to the mailbox and support their independence, but that might also leave them at risk of a safety concern.
Right,
so
tell me that.
They could potentially, as much as it's not their favorite thing to do, they might consider using their assistive device, wheeled walker, to make their way to the mailbox and back in a relatively safe way, while also honoring their value of independence.
Susan says she knows she values family and relationships, but feels her wife places a higher value on status and wealth. How can two people with different core values find compatibility?
Even the people that we're closest to can hold somewhat different values. When there is trust in these relationships, even when there's conflict, a common goal can usually be found. Of course, not right in the heat of the moment, but maybe when the two people have some time, Susan and her wife might sit and compare notes on their values. They might come with a curious mind, an open mind, and this might yield some surprising and maybe even more exciting and connecting information about the two. And it could probably help them to become more skilled at being the partner they want to be for each other. They can likely find better ways to articulate why they're thinking and feeling about a certain conflict with each other, and have more productive conversations around conflict. In all likelihood, these values aren't completely opposed, and through some exploration, they can probably find ways to honor both perspectives.
Wednesday the 11th.
So let's say, for example, Susan and her wife live near Susan's family,
when
and
is
her
Thursday?
wife has 2 new job offers. One of them's in town, and the other one is a little bit farther away, maybe 2 hours, but it comes with a higher salary. Perhaps through this process of negotiating their values with each other, there's an approach that honors both perspectives. One version could be taking the higher salary job that's farther away, but committing to visiting family more often. Or maybe taking the job that's nearby, but finally taking a look at the budget and trimming out unnecessary expenses that they haven't had a chance yet.
Well, you've shared some really important and useful insights about value-based living with MS. What would you say are the top 3 takeaways that you'd like our viewers to remember and use?
Yeah, well, maybe in the next week or so, take some time to examine your most important values. Maybe look up a values assessment and spend a little bit of time coming up with maybe your top 5 to 10. That's a really nice place to start. and then considering them as almost like a daily mantra, rehearsing them so that they're fresh on your mind when you come across really complicated decisions. Another point that I would consider is if you want to enhance your own motivation, remember how to measure your own confidence and how important something is to you, and ask what might be something that can change just 1% to move you closer to those values today or even just this week. And then lastly, recognize that we all have natural judgments in our mind. And to some degree, everybody has this. Challenge yourself to choose to come to everyday situations with curiosity about your thinking, your feelings, and your actions.
Well, I want to thank everyone who submitted some great questions, and thank you, Evan, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Before we close, I want to remind you that the National MS Society's MS Navigator team is your best partner when it comes to connecting you to the very best information and resources on living with MS. You can reach an MS Navigator by phone, email, or through the Society's website by chat. For information and resources on MS, please be sure to visit the Society's website. You'll find research updates and news, information on connection programs like self-help groups and MS Friends. You'll hear about ways that you can get involved, and you'll find out about upcoming events that are taking place near you. Remember, you can connect with the National MS Society and others affected by MS on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I hope you'll join me every week on the Real Talk MS podcast, where I continue the conversation that we start here. You'll find Real Talk MS at realtalkms.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'd like to thank Evan for joining us today. Please remember that a recording of this webcast will be available at the Society's website at nationalmssociety.org/MSExpert, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you'll join us at this same time for next week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. You can always find our upcoming program topics on the National MS Society's website. And now I have a favor to ask each of you. Getting your feedback on today's webcast is important. So if you're watching on Facebook Live, you'll see a link to a survey pinned to the comments section. On YouTube, you'll find that link in the program description. And on Twitch, you can find that link in the chat. Completing the survey makes a real difference. The information you provide helps us continuously improve, and it helps shape future programs. The survey takes just 1 minute, so I hope you'll take a minute to fill it out. On behalf of Dr. Evan Smith and the National MS Society, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Please stay safe and make healthy choices. Welcome to this week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. I'm John Strum, and I'm the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with the news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways that MS can impact the family. I'm a past member of the International Progressive MS Alliance Scientific Steering Committee, and currently I'm a district activist leader and trustee for the National MS Society, and I chair the Society's California Government Relations Advisory Committee. The MS Society's Ask an MS Expert webcast is designed to give us a place for the MS community to connect, and to connect you with the MS experts who are ready to answer your questions on the topics that impact people living with MS every day. Please feel free to post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. MS Navigators are online throughout today's program, answering your questions and connecting you to resources. Recent research published in the journal Science by a team at Harvard provides the strongest evidence yet for the role of the Epstein-Barr virus in triggering multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
Dr. Bruce Bebo, the Executive Vice President of Research at the National MS Society, is joining us today to talk about the impact of this research breakthrough on the MS community and what the MS Society plans to do with this new information. Welcome, Bruce. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, John. Good to be with you. Looking forward to it.
We've been talking about this connection between the Epstein-Barr virus, or EBV, and MS for quite a while now, so this discovery is really exciting. The study results show that EBV is the leading cause of multiple sclerosis. So can we definitively say EBV causes MS?
Well, let's dig into that a little bit. So Epstein-Barr virus, or EBV, is a highly prevalent virus. By adulthood, about 95% of us show evidence that we've been infected with EBV. And this is a virus that lives inside of most of us. It lives inside of us for all of our lives. And in most cases, it doesn't cause any harm. Most people are infected with EBV when they're very young, a time when it usually, again, doesn't cause any symptoms. But if you get infected during adolescence or early adulthood, it can sometimes cause symptoms. It can cause a disease about 30 to 50% of the time, a disease called mononucleosis, sometimes called glandular fever. And this is, and there's overwhelming evidence that there's an association between mononucleosis caused by EBV infection and MS. And this association between MS and EBV and mono, it's important to remember that that doesn't necessarily mean that MS is caused by EBV. So let's look at this illustration, John, and kind of try to understand the differences between associations and causations. So there are a number of clues that we're going to need to be able to show causation. So the first clue is that the infection, the event, whatever it might be, in this case, the infection with EBV, it needs to come before the onset of MS, right? It can't really be a cause if it comes after. So that's one piece of the puzzle. We also have to eliminate the possibility that there's some confounding factor, like that's illustrated in this slide, right? There's an association between eating ice cream and sunburn, but sunburn doesn't cause you to eat ice cream or the other way around. And so you got to make sure that there isn't some other confounding factor that is contributing to the association. And you need to also eliminate this concept of reverse causality. So in this case, does EBV cause MS, or does having MS or being at high risk for MS cause you to get mono? And so you have to eliminate that possibility. And then finally, the clue you need to show definitively causation, of course, is that if you prevent infection, that you, and in this case, prevent infection with EBV, that you can prevent MS. So the article that you talked about, John, in Science, extremely well done study by a highly respected group. What they showed was that the infection with EBV precedes, it comes before any evidence of MS. And it also showed that it's highly unlikely that being at risk for MS also makes one more susceptible to EBV. So it's just a strong argument against this reverse causation. So I would say that we're a lot closer to proving causation. And of course, the one piece of the puzzle left is to show that preventing EBV can prevent MS. And so I borrowed this slide, John, that help us illustrate this a little bit. I borrowed this from our colleague, Gavin Giovannoni. I hope this helps understand really the implications for the study. So while we don't know the exact cause of MS, over the last several decades, a number of factors, including mononucleosis, have been associated with the increased risk for MS. And many of you have heard these already. There's a role for genetics. For example, we know that if you have a close relative with MS, your risk is higher for developing MS. We know things like low levels of vitamin D, childhood obesity, and smoking are contributing risk factors for MS. And so these all, in combination with Epstein-Barr virus and infectious mononucleosis are all contributing factors. And I'd say from this study, John, based on the really very strong risk that EBV seems to add to this equation, it's really pretty likely that this is a necessary and a key factor that contributes to the cause of MS. And like it's illustrated on the slide, like a string of dominoes, if we can take out one or more of these really critical risk factors, we can keep the rest of the dominoes from falling, and we can potentially prevent MS from happening in the first place.
I heard you say that about 95% of a population has or is carrying EBV. How is it transmitted?
Yeah. So EBV virus is in the herpes virus family. It's related to viruses that cause chickenpox and herpes infections. And it's transmitted primarily through saliva. And as I mentioned, more than 95% of the human population has been infected with EBV. And this virus, it infects the immune system, and it persists in a latent form in immune cells called B cells, and they live there the virus lives there for the rest of your life. And in addition to being a trigger for MS, it's also associated, this virus is associated with a higher risk for some blood cancers. It's estimated that EBV infection accounts for about 200,000 new cancer cases and accounts for about 150,000 deaths a year worldwide. And in addition to this, our increasing understanding of the involvement of EBV and the risk for MS, there's evidence that EBV contributes to the risk of some other autoimmune diseases like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and Sjogren's syndrome.
You know, I'm thinking back to the beginning of the current pandemic that we find ourselves in. Before there were any safe and effective vaccines as there are available today, what health professionals were recommending is if you want to avoid the COVID, the novel coronavirus, you would practice social distancing and wear a mask. And it made me wonder, is there a way to avoid getting EBV?
I would say, John, not really. There's not really a practical way to avoid becoming infected. Maybe, just never kiss anybody. Maybe that would be one way to do it, but I don't think that that's practical. I think, our best hope is a vaccine. I think that's the best way we're going to prevent infection.
And to that point, I know clinical trials for an EBV vaccine are underway. How close are we to testing an EBV vaccine in people with MS?
Yeah, so research and testing of experimental vaccines for EBV have been underway for decades, really. This virus is complex. It has a complex life cycle, and there aren't any animal models for this infection. So progress in the development of vaccines has been slower than we would like, and certainly slower than what we saw for other viruses like the virus that causes COVID. But we're getting closer. We're getting closer to safe and effective vaccines for EBV. Recently, a vaccine was shown to significantly reduce the incidence of mononucleosis. It doesn't prevent infection, but it does prevent the mononucleosis. And some scientists think maybe that'll be enough. That could potentially be enough to prevent at least some cases of MS. And there are new vaccines being tested. Perhaps many of you have seen already that about a first-in-human trial of a vaccine developed, an mRNA vaccine developed by Moderna for EBV. That's in an early phase clinical trial. So there's progress being made, and I think there's one should be optimistic that we may have a safe and effective vaccine in the near future.
And could an EBV vaccine prevent someone from getting MS?
Yeah, I think that's a real possibility, John. But
no,
of course, the only way to prove it would be to conduct a
vaccine
clinical trial, and as you could imagine, that is a little bit tricky. But the society has been consulting with global experts
is EBV the reason why
to explore different concepts, approaches for an MS prevention trial, so that once we have a safe and effective vaccine, we'll be ready to test it in an MS prevention trial in an expedited way.
Just curious, did the National MS Society participate in funding this study at Harvard? And will the society continue funding research into the cause of MS?
Yeah, so the society did help fund part of the study, and specifically, we funded some of the experiments that were published in the work that provided evidence that the virus contributes to MS risk rather than the other way around. So that the parts of the study that helped create a case against reverse causation were funded by the society. I think, in my opinion, that was one of the most important observations in the paper. And we've been funding research into triggers and risk factors for MS for decades. We've invested millions of dollars specifically in elucidating the role of EBV in MS. And prevention of MS is one of the pillars of our Pathways to Cures research roadmap initiative. And we will be prioritizing research that provides insights into how we might be able to prevent MS, including vaccine for EBV.
We heard from Brent. He shared with us that he's had some muscle and joint issues a year ago. So he had some blood tests done and found that he was positive for the Epstein-Barr virus. Brent says he's never had mononucleosis. He has no history of MS in his family, and he's wondering whether everyone who contracts the Epstein-Barr virus gets MS.
Right. Well, so as we discussed previously, by adulthood, somewhere on the order of 95% of us have been infected with EBV, and in most cases, people don't even know it. So no, the vast majority of people with EBV do not get MS. What we do know is that if you get EBV as a teenager or young adult, and it's symptomatic, right? You get this mononucleosis, your risk for MS is higher than if you got EBV as an infant or a child. But again, only really a very small proportion of the people who get mono.
And of course, there's no way to test that because who wants to infect their kid
We heard
with
from
EBV?
Jada, who says she's been living with MS for 20 years, and she wants us to know that she finds the study results really promising for the future. She's wondering whether the study offers any sort of benefit for people who are currently living with MS.
So I guess I would say not specifically related to this study, but there are other studies and ongoing studies determine whether MS might actually be a consequence of ongoing EBV infection. Some have in the context of COVID, considered this or thinking of this as a long-term consequence, rare consequence of EBV infection, and that remains a possibility. The virus likes to hide and sometimes affects the function of immune B cells, and we know B cells play an important role in MS. There are ongoing clinical trials testing cell-based approaches that target EBV-infected B cells, and early results are promising. And I expect this and other studies might also inspire testing of perhaps, John, antiviral drugs or other approaches for treating EBV infection and potentially having some influence or role in reducing ongoing MS.
Does this study from Harvard show whether EBV causes MS relapses, progression?
Sure. So no, that this study, again, specifically the study doesn't address that question, but I'd say it's plausible for the reasons that I mentioned, that EBV infects B cells, and we know B cells have an important role to play in MS. Some of our very good disease-modifying therapies are targeting those cells. So it's certainly plausible that EBV-infected cells are playing a role in ongoing disease. Another concept, John, a way that EBV might be playing a role in triggering, causing MS is this concept called molecular mimicry. So the idea is that the virus expresses proteins, receptors on its surface that look like proteins and receptors that are expressed by the nervous system and accidentally cause the immune system to react to the nervous system. That's another concept, and additional knowledge that could be used to potentially help develop therapies, approaches for treating ongoing disease.
You know, I'm thinking about the picture of the dominoes you showed us a moment ago, and seeing how if we can knock out that EBV domino, it prevents MS from developing at the end of all those dominoes. Well, Jada asked a question that's a little different than that. She's wondering whether a treatment for EBV might help to cure people who are already living with MS.
Yeah, I think that's plausible, and there are, again, cell-based therapies and pharmaceutical approaches, perhaps an antiviral approach, John, that might be able to at least improve and potentially cure MS. And there are ongoing studies, of course, to test those ideas.
We heard from Ashley, who says she doesn't have MS, but when she was a teenager, she did have mononucleosis, which, as you pointed out, is caused by the Epstein-Barr virus. She also wants us to know that her grandmother is living with MS. And Ashley's concerned that based on the news about EBV and MS and her genetics, she's worried that she's going to develop MS. And she wants to know whether there's any sort of test or screening that she can have done to see whether she could develop MS.
Yeah, so not yet, but this is an area of active investigation, and I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that we may be able to determine who's at high risk for MS and determine that with enough confidence that we could begin a treatment prior even to the onset of symptoms and significantly delay or maybe even prevent MS. And we recently funded more than a dozen new projects in this that area of research. And I guess, John, the other thing I would say is I would advise Ashley to be on the lookout for neurological symptoms, symptoms that might suggest some of the early signs of MS. So things like vision problems, and I would encourage everyone who's concerned about the risk for MS to have an annual eye exam. Things like sensory issues, numbness, tingling, balance problems, etc. These sort of symptoms that suggest a neurological issue, I would encourage people who may be at a little higher risk than the general population, like Ashley, to be on the eye for those symptoms, pun kind of intended, and report those symptoms to your healthcare provider and follow up on them, because they could be early indications of MS.
Well, that's great advice. You know, now that we have this scientific consensus, what's the National MS Society going to do with this new information?
Right. So as I mentioned before, supporting research in MS prevention is a key part of our Pathways to Cures research initiative. And we already have plans to make targeted research investments in this really promising area of research. And as I mentioned before, we've already made recent and new investments that build upon previous work in this area of investigation. We have up to now received the endorsement of over 20 global MS organizations on this Pathways to Cures research roadmap. So there's already global consensus that, among other areas, targeting research in MS prevention is a high priority. And this study and others provide more clues and more guidance about where to focus new research investments. And because of the increased global leadership the society has taken in accelerating the development of treatments for progressive MS through the International Progressive MS Alliance, and also the consensus that we built around Pathways to Cures, I'm more confident than ever that we will be able to inspire the other funders, other members of the MS movement to join us in a coordinated effort to fully understand the implications of this study, understand the implications for MS prevention, and be positioned to test promising prevention strategies, maybe even including an EBV vaccine in the near future.
Well, I want to thank you for helping us better understand the relationship between EBV and MS, and for putting these new study results into context for us. Bruce, what would you say are the top 3 takeaways that you'd like our audience to remember today?
Yeah, so the first is that we are closer than we ever have been to identifying and understanding the triggers and risk factors for MS. That knowledge is going to lead to prevention and treatment strategies that can be tested and will be tested in the next few years in clinical trials. And then my third point, John, is really that there are early warning signs of MS. As I mentioned, problems with vision, or balance and walking, numbness, tingling, things like that. And that if you have a close relative with MS, maybe you're a woman and maybe you had mono as a teenager, or you're a smoker. Those are all risk factors that I think would indicate that you really should be on high alert for those early symptoms and report them to your healthcare provider as soon as possible, and see a neurologist as soon as possible. And that way we could potentially identify people very, very early on in their journey with MS. And we know the earlier we diagnose MS and the earlier we start treating it with an effective disease-modifying therapy, the better the long-term outcomes are going to be.
I think we have time for one or two more questions. We got one from Maggie that is interesting. She wants to know whether it's possible to have MS but not have EBV.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's extremely unlikely. So remember, we said it many times now that 95% of the population has evidence for EBV. Well, up to now, 100% of people with MS have shown evidence of EBV. Now, that there is now one exception. The science paper that we were talking about, John, today, did have one case of MS without any evidence up to now of an EBV infection. As far, to the best of my knowledge, that's the first case ever in history of MS without evidence of EBV. But up to that case, there's been no evidence of MS without exposure to EBV.
And we heard from Angel, who's wondering, how do you find out if you have EBV? Is there a test for it?
Yeah, you can get a test for it, John. I'm not sure there's a lot of value in being tested for it. Again, you can assume, since 95% of the population has evidence for EBV, that you've had it. And there really isn't any actionable, I don't think, from the knowledge that you had it or not. I'd say the key knowledge that might be helpful for people at risk for MS is whether they had mono or not. That's probably more important than knowing whether you're infected with EBV or not.
Well, I want to thank everyone who submitted some great questions today.
Every time I watch
Thanks
this
for
and they talk
being
about
with us,
mono, man,
Bruce.
it makes a whole lot of sense because my ex in high school had mono at one point.
Before we
and
close, I want to remind you that the National MS Society's MS Navigator
Go figure,
team
that crazy bitch
is your
would
best
fucking
partner
put me in the
when
grave
it comes
with
to
me.
connecting you to the very best information and resources on living with MS. You can reach an MS Navigator by phone, email, or through the Society's website by chat. For information and resources on MS, please visit the Society's website. You'll find research updates and news, information on connection programs like self-help groups and MS Friends, ways for you to get involved, and information about events taking place near you. Remember, you can connect with the National MS Society and others affected by MS on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I hope you'll join me every week on the Real Talk MS podcast, where I continue the conversation that we start here. You'll find Real Talk MS at realtalkms.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'd like to thank Dr. Bruce Bebo for joining us today. Please remember that a recording of this webinar is going to be available at the Society's website at nationalmssociety.org/MSExpert, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you'll join us at this same time for next week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. You can always find our upcoming program topics on the National MS Society's website. And now I have a favor to ask each of you. Getting your feedback on today's program is important. So you'll see a survey pop up in a moment when we close out the webinar. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, you'll see a link to that survey pinned to the comments section. And on YouTube, you'll find that link in the program description. Completing this survey makes a real difference.
I just want to know which one I
The
have to
information
do in
you
order
provide
to do
helps
live
us
streaming.
continuously
Come on, TikTok.
improve, and
Right,
it helps
TikTok,
shape future webinars. The survey takes just 1 minute. So I hope you'll take a minute and please fill it out. On behalf of Dr. Bruce Bebo and the National MS Society, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Please stay safe and make healthy choices.
Got it. So, if you
Welcome
ever
to
had
this
mono,
week's
you
edition
might
of
have
Ask an MS Expert. I'm John Strum, and I'm the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with the information and news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways that MS can impact a family. Currently, I serve on the MS Society's Community Review of MS Research Committee. I'm a district activist leader and trustee for the National MS Society, and I chair the Society's California Government Relations Advisory Committee. The MS Society's Ask an MS Expert webcast is designed to give us a place for the MS community to connect and to connect you with experts who are ready to answer your questions on the topics that impact people affected by MS every day. Please feel free to post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. MS Navigators are online throughout today's program, answering those questions, connecting you to resources. MS is expensive. And the cost of living with MS can have a significant impact on your quality of life. People with MS have reported problems ranging from managing money in ways that include late bill payments to unnecessary and often costly impulse buying. Bruce McClary, the Senior Vice President of Membership and Media Relations at the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, is joining me today to talk about budgeting when you're living with MS. Welcome, Bruce, and thanks for being with us today.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me with you.
A recent study funded by the National MS Society found the average cost of living with MS is $88,487 a year. That's a significant amount of money. So when we talk about budgeting and financial planning when you're living with MS, we're really talking about planning to preserve your quality of life. So let's start with a couple of important definitions. Bruce, what exactly is a budget, and what are the benefits of having a budget?
That's a great question. I mean, it's always a good starting point to talk about budgeting. That is the foundation of every decision you make regarding your personal finances and reaching your goals. So a budget is a financial plan that outlines your expected income and expenses over a specific period. And that the frequency of budgeting is very important. So it's kind of like a roadmap, really, but it's also about geolocation. Where are you now, and how did you get where you are, and where would you like to go? So having a budget gives you the opportunity to track your spending, to understand your spending, where you're spending the most, where you're spending the least. It helps you identify areas where you can cut back. It helps you save for future goals. Goals are very important. And then, of course, it helps you prepare for unexpected expenses. But you really can't have a workable plan to get to your goals if you don't understand where you are in the moment and how you got there. So it's very important to visit your budget, to track your spending, and to look for ways to optimize your budget to help you get to the goals that you have for yourself. So that's really what a budget is and how it can help you.
So I have a two-part question for you, I guess. What other factors do people with MS specifically have to consider when making a budget? And because MS can be so unpredictable, how can someone go about creating a budget that accounts for potential future medical expenses?
Yeah, another great question. I mean, this is, these circumstances just add another challenge to the budgeting process. And so it's very important, first and foremost, to try to get as much of a handle on fluctuating medical costs as you can, to understand how those costs may change, what may drive those costs in the future, based on your current needs and where you think you are headed with your treatment and your medical needs and your medical care. Potential changes in income due to disability are an example of areas where you need to focus, and it helps to understand what scenarios may play out in the future and how you may need to adjust your budget to address those changes, and any long-term care needs that you see ahead of you, and whether those needs are based on a higher degree of certainty or not. Again, think about all the different scenarios that could play out in your situation and work through those options, so that way you have clarity about how your budget may change under certain circumstances. So then when something happens, if your care takes a different direction or if your needs in one area increase, it's likely then, if you planned ahead and you thought about these scenarios, you can pull something that it gives you a roadmap on how to address that change. And that the fewer surprises there are, the better capable you will be to handle these things in the moment and pivot. So that helps as well. And again, there could be all kinds of different estimates that you have to put together related to medical expenses, disability income, savings goals in your budget. So it's always helpful as well to consider different types of budgeting tools that are available to allow for variable income and expenses.
Marcus wants to know if there's a difference between budgeting and financial planning, and if there is one more beneficial than the other for someone who's living with MS?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, budgeting is a short-term plan, really focusing on managing monthly income and expenses. Financial planning is about the long-term strategy for achieving financial goals, including retirement, and of course, in this case, including healthcare and estate planning. So both are essential, and I would say financial planning is particularly important for people with MS to ensure long-term financial security. But I would follow up again by saying both are essential, and they can work hand in hand.
We heard from Leah, who says she's struggling to keep up with her business. Are there any resources that can help Leah get started making a budget for herself?
Yeah, there are so many free online budgeting tools and apps available. There are a lot of popular options that you can find readily available on the internet. It's very important, though, to make sure that you're selecting an option that meets your needs, but also is safe and secure. We all know that when you're out there on the internet, there are some security issues with certain websites, especially those that gather your personal information. So you always want to be clear as you're selecting some of these apps, some of these tools that can help you in these circumstances, to ensure that you are protected, but also that your needs are served. And there are many popular apps that are out there, but oftentimes we talk about the tool called You Need a Budget, otherwise known as YNAB. It's a free tool. It helps you work through some of these budgeting scenarios. It's one of the more complete tools that are out there in the market right now. And a lot of people ask, well, what about Mint? Well, Mint was taken off the market earlier this year. It was wildly popular. A lot of people recommended it.
Might be from
but I would say a suitable replacement for Mint, a suitable substitute going forward is You Need a Budget. There are also other apps like Pocket Guard But you can go through the marketplace and look at those kind of budgeting tools. And if you really want to start with the basics, a good, safe place to start is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's a government agency that's focused on financial well-being and financial protection. And they actually have some budgeting tools on their website. They're very basic, but it's a good starting point.
Harvey tells us that he also wants to budget his money to feel more financially stable at the end of each month, but he doesn't spend very much time online. Is it possible for Harvey to create and follow a budget without accessing the internet or using any tech-related tools?
I love this question. It makes me think of my dad sitting down every month with the budget and working with pen and paper to go through all of the details. And what my dad did was he used graphing paper to create a spreadsheet that he could use with pen and paper every month to track his expenses. And it helps to know what areas of your budget you need to look at and what category, how you need to approach each category. There's a lot of guidance available to help you get started if you want to create something from scratch. My dad would be so proud if you do that, but you can go to your public library to get some direction on what you might do to create that. There could be templates available. If you're not going online, the library is a great place to start. Libraries are also great places to access financial help in terms of budgeting seminars, groups that get together and talk about budgeting and saving money. So I would advocate certainly for your local library as a resource, and get that pen and get that graph paper, and you can put together your own template. If you need something that's pre-made, that's printed and pre-made, you don't want to sit down with a graph paper, you don't want to map out a budget that way, there are also tools available. Some of it may require getting online, so if you know somebody who has online access, or again, using the library as a tool, if you can get to the library, use one of the computers, visit these websites to print your budget. The NFCC, the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, my organization, has a free budget template and expense worksheet that you can print. And you can print copies of that and use that as you need each month. And again, I mentioned in the earlier question, the CFPB as a resource. Their budget template is also printable. And you can go to the CFPB and look for monthly budget. You can search for that on their website, or you can use the direct link. You can download that and you can print that out and use that as well.
Lionel has two questions. He's in his early 30s, and first he's wondering how much he should be saving for healthcare costs in retirement, then wants to know when he should start saving.
Why is the 3-foot one?
Well, I guess the first thing I should mention is it's very difficult to provide very broad advice that also lands at a specific amount. Your circumstances are unique. Your starting point may be different from someone else's, and also healthcare costs vary. So again, I can't throw a specific figure or percentage out there. However, addressing the second question and then getting back to the first question, starting to save early is crucial. Contributing to a health savings account, if you're eligible, is absolutely something to do, and because it offers tax advantages. So my advice would be that you contribute early and often to help you afford medical care later in life as the money in your HSA grows tax-free, and it can do that for 30 to 40 years. So the earlier you start, the more likely you are to get ahead of some of your needs in the future and be prepared to have the money, the tax-free savings, to apply to those expenses. You can also use an HSA calculator to run through different contributions. That can also help you determine once you get started, preferably early, what you should be setting aside. And there's a great resource on Benefit Wallet. It's a calculator that can help you get started in that area.
Allison says she has put a budget together, but found that her expenses are simply higher than her income. What are some ways that Allison can work on reducing?
Sitting down and looking at your expenses, you can make some changes in your budget. And I would start by saying a budget is a living, breathing thing. It is not etched in stone, and it's not something that has to be the same from month to month throughout the rest of your life. In fact, the purpose of a budget is to be something putting you in a situation where you have less money available to pay for the expenses you have. That is your cue to sit down and go through and try to identify areas to make adjustments. So look first in categories of non-essential spending. Any kind of discretionary spending that you have is in play for any kind of a cut, reduction, or adjustment to make these areas either more affordable or to right-size them, even temporarily, to help you get through a difficult financial period. Negotiate bills, and this is one of my favorite things to recommend, because so few people think they have negotiating power when it comes to reaching out to your utility providers and your creditors and your lenders. We even conducted a survey a while back showing that a very small percentage of Americans even consider reaching out and having the conversation with their utility billers and with their creditors to try to find more affordable ways to manage what they owe. And oftentimes these different providers have solutions ready for you if you'll just reach out proactively and ask. So that's one thing that can help you find additional flexibility in your budget. And then, of course, you can always go back to some of the age-old advice of looking for opportunities to save on groceries and services, using coupons or discounts. You can consider if it's a really major shortfall in your budget, you might want to consider downsizing or changing your living situation so that becomes more affordable on the housing side. And you can also explore nonprofit resources and government assistance programs in significant to resolve significant budget issues.
Kathleen lives with MS, and she's also living with substantial medical and credit card debt. Kathleen feels she'll never be debt-free and struggles to prioritize money management. What are some strategies for Kathleen to help manage her debt while planning for ongoing medical care expenses?
Yeah, first of all, I think the thing that I would let Kathleen know is you're never at the point where things are hopeless when it comes to options in dealing with both your medical and your credit card debt. You may feel that you have exhausted all available options, and you might feel that you've reached the end of the line at some point, but that just really calls attention to the fact that there are resources out there that can help you identify things that you may not have considered or may not be aware of. So it's helpful to understand that. But there are two approaches you can take, and of course, before you get to that point, there are some things that you can do for yourself to try to get your credit card debt under control while addressing some of the medical debt as well. And I think going back to my earlier advice about budgeting also includes understanding how you're going to repay the debt that you owe. So that means creating a debt repayment plan. And it helps to list the debts that you owe, the minimum payments, the balances, and the interest rate, and understand how that affects the progress you're making in paying down your debt. A good way to get ahead of that is to prioritize high interest rate debts. You can use what's called the debt snowball or the debt avalanche. Those are two very popular methods to accelerate how your debt repayment and to get those debts paid down and to get ahead of the interest and the fees that you might be charged. And you may consider debt consolidation loans as an option if you have qualifying credit and your accounts are paid up to date, and that can also help you identify ways to save on your monthly payment as well as the interest and fees. You can also explore options for medical debt relief. There are many organizations out there that can provide access to resources that can help take the edge off the out-of-pocket medical costs and help you understand where insurance coverage gaps exist and how you might be able to address those. And then you can continue budgeting and saving for future medical costs. But I would highly recommend contacting an NFCC certified credit counselor for a financial review and guidance on available debt management options if things are starting to fall behind, if your payments are falling behind, if you're getting hit with late fees, over limit fees, or even if you're dealing with debt collectors. The initial review is typically free, and what you discover with the help of the credit counselor is something that can make a big difference, because it helps you end up selecting the most suitable options based on your circumstances and goals. And of course, you can connect with that resource by going to nfcc.org.
Jose says he knows medical costs for MS can be high, and he's heard that there are ways to maximize his insurance through strategically planning his medical appointments. Can you explain how Jose could get the most benefit from his insurance?
Yeah, I think that this is an area again where I think it's about timing and understanding your own coverage and working with your network providers to schedule appointments, and then of course utilizing some preventive care services that are available, get pre-authorization for costly treatments, and be very aggressive in appealing some denied claims in this process. But I think it's very important at the onset to clearly understand your insurance coverage and how that may impact this strategy, and then have discussions with your network providers, your in-network providers, to talk about this, to maximize that benefit, because it is possible to maximize the benefits of your insurance through strategically planning these appointments. But it all starts with clearly understanding your insurance coverage and having an open dialogue with your in-network providers about how to maximize that strategy.
Kelsey tells us that she's prepared and followed a budget for a few months, and now her income has slightly increased. She's worried that this minor increase in income might cause her to lose eligibility for some assistance programs. Is there anything she can do to keep both her increase in income and her eligibility in these programs?
Yeah, first of all, for Kelsey, yes, it is true that increased income can affect eligibility for certain assistance programs. Kelsey should contact relevant agencies to understand some of the specific income limits and reporting requirements. And if help is needed in understanding some of those choices, I think it's helpful to reach out to maybe a nonprofit organization or other provider of assistance that can guide you through some of the complexities of these assistance programs, your eligibility, and even areas where your insurance coverage comes into play. One such organization is Patient Advocate Foundation. They're a great nonprofit organization that does provide guidance in these areas. I would strongly encourage reaching out to them for some additional guidance here.
A moment ago, I heard you mention working with a certified credit counselor. Can you explain what a credit counselor is and how they might be helpful to someone?
Yeah, a nonprofit NFCC certified credit counselor provides guidance on managing debt and improving your overall financial well-being. Essentially, this is a nonprofit financial professional who's your financial advocate, there to help you find the most suitable options based on your circumstances. And because the initial consultation is typically free, these nonprofit credit counseling services are an excellent place to start. And if you need help beyond that step, if you're considering other financial professionals to work with, I would recommend considering maybe working with tax planners, tax advisors, a disability insurance specialist, and even an attorney who specializes in financial planning and insurance issues. But again, I think a great starting point, if you're looking at budgeting and debt management and you're trying to consider where you are and where you need to be, a nonprofit NFCC certified counselor is a great place to start, because the consultation initially is typically free, and it gives you a lot of information and advice to start with as a foundation for your next steps. And it helps you decide what's best to do next based on what you learn through that initial consultation. And of course, you can get that at nfcc.org.
Carlos says he's interested in using a credit counselor, but isn't sure where to start. What's the best way for Carlos to find a nonprofit NFCC certified credit counselor?
Well, there are two ways to connect with an NFCC certified credit counselor through the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. First, you can visit the website, nfcc.org. Not only can the website connect you directly with a nonprofit credit counselor, it can also help you drill down to the specific area of need that you want to address during your counseling session. And you can also reach out to counselors on the phone if you're not accessing the internet, and there's a toll-free number you can call to accomplish the same thing, to connect with an NFCC certified counselor. And that phone number is 1-800-388-2227. That's 1-800-388-2227. And you may be looking for somebody near you where you can go meet with them in person, if that's your option. But I would say that brick and mortar services may not be available in all areas. So if you start with nfcc.org, or if you start with the toll-free number 1-800-388-2227, you can get directed to somebody who is capable of assisting you either by phone or online when services aren't available in your area. But I would also caution people to be aware of imposters and these debt elimination offers that you hear on the radio or see on TV or sometimes online. Scams are very common in the debt relief space. Legitimate providers, where they do exist, don't often offer budget reviews and other services that ensure the suitability of their services. So when you work with a trusted nonprofit provider of credit counseling, like those with the NFCC, the first thing you do is go through a full financial review and get some advice from the counselor to help you better understand the options in front of you. And that's often lacking from some of these quick debt relief offers that you hear about in advertisements. So just be very careful when you're out in that space. Good idea to start with nonprofit credit counseling and go to nfcc.org.
You know, Bruce, you've shared some very useful information with us today. What would you say are the top 3 takeaways that you'd like our viewers to remember?
Yeah, there's a recurring theme in some of the answers that I provided, and I think first and foremost, it has to do with creating a budget and addressing medical expenses. Everyone with the expectation of ongoing medical care should build a budget that considers potential future medical costs. And I addressed this in one of the earlier questions. This will help take control of finances and create a plan for a secure financial future. And of course, resources are available to help, including the free online tools I mentioned, and some of the non-internet based methods like printing out a budget. So the tool I mentioned earlier, You Need a Budget, is an example of an often recommended free budgeting tool. And of course, you can also get printable budgets from resources like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The second item I would mention is to reduce expenses and manage debt. If you stay on top of your budget, this step is pretty easy. If expenses exceed income, explore cost-cutting strategies. If you have overwhelming debt, there are methods to manage it while planning for ongoing medical expenses. And financial professionals like NFCC certified nonprofit counselors can offer professional guidance. And of course, you can get that advice and that assistance by going to nfcc.org or calling 1-800-388-2227 for more information and connect with a counselor. And the third piece of advice that I would offer is to maximize your health insurance benefits and tap into all the resources that help make health care more manageable and affordable within your budget. So understanding how to strategically use health insurance significantly can reduce medical costs, and it can do that without sacrificing the quality of your care. So when you need help, you can work with support organizations that can provide guidance in this area. One such support organization is one that I mentioned earlier, and that's Patient Advocate Foundation.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. I think we have time to answer one more question from our audience. It comes from Kerry, who has put together a budget and feels his lifestyle is manageable now, but worries about his rent increasing. What are his options when it comes to rising housing costs?
Yeah, this is a very common problem for a lot of people. I mean, as we know, housing costs have risen in many, many areas across the country, not just for renters, also homeowners. The cost of owning a home beyond your mortgage itself is becoming more of an impactful on people's budgets. So I think two things are in play here. If your housing expenses are increasing and you know that is putting a bigger and bigger dent into your budget, it's important to consider what options you have available by first engaging in a discussion with either your landlord if you're a renter or with your mortgage provider if you're a homeowner, and explore more affordable ways to manage your housing costs. And there may be alternatives. If you're a homeowner, there may be alternatives to finding a more affordable mortgage option. If you're a renter, and especially in situations where in situations where you're facing eviction or your situation is very extreme, there are assistance programs available in communities that can help prevent eviction and help you preserve your housing situation more affordably. But it all starts with a conversation either with your landlord or, if you're a homeowner, with your mortgage provider, and then you can take it from there. And everybody's circumstance differs, but I think it starts with asking those questions and exploring the different options to make housing more affordable. And I should mention as well that as a resource, the NFCC offers housing counseling programs. So people who are at risk of foreclosure can reach out and get assistance from HUD-approved counselors by going to nfcc.org.
Well, I want to thank everyone who submitted some great questions, and thank you, Bruce, for being with us today.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Before we close, I want to remind you that the National MS Society's MS Navigator team is your best partner when it comes to connecting you to the very best information and resources on living with MS. You can reach an MS Navigator by phone, email, or through the Society's website by chat. For information and resources on MS, please visit the Society's website. You'll find research updates and news, information on connection programs like self-help groups and MS Friends. You'll hear about ways to get involved, and you'll find out about upcoming events that are taking place near you. Remember, you can connect with the National MS Society and others affected by MS on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I hope you'll join me every week on the Real Talk MS podcast, where I continue the conversation that we start here. You'll find Real Talk MS at realtalkms.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. I'd like to thank jenny.org/MSExpert, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you'll join us at this same time for next week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. You can always find our upcoming program topics on the National MS Society's website. And now I have a favor to ask each of you. Getting your feedback on today's webcast is important. So if you're watching on Facebook Live, you'll see a link to a survey pinned to the comments section. On YouTube, you'll find that link in the program description. And on Twitch, find that link in the chat. Completing the survey makes a real difference. The information you provide helps us continuously improve, and it helps shape future programs. The survey takes just 1 minute, so I hope you'll take a minute to fill it out. On behalf of Jenny Nordin and National MS Society, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Please stay safe and make healthy choices. Welcome to this week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. I'm John Strum, and I'm the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with the news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways that MS can impact a family. Currently, I serve on the MS Society's Community Review of MS Research Committee. I'm a district activist leader and trustee for the National MS Society, and I chair the Society's California Government Relations Advisory Committee. The MS Society's Ask an MS Expert webcast is designed to give us a place for the MS community to connect and to connect you with experts who are ready to answer your questions on the topics that impact people with MS every day. Please feel free to post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. MS Navigators are online throughout today's program, answering those questions, connecting you to resources. Driving can be an important part of maintaining your independence. While MS may present challenges while you're behind the wheel, there are steps you can take to keep yourself and others safe while driving. Jenny Nordin, an occupational therapist and certified driver rehabilitation specialist at Driving to Independence, joins us today to explore how people with MS can safely maintain their driving independence through understanding vehicle modifications and accessibility options. Welcome, Jenny. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks so much, John.
When I introduced you, I mentioned that you were an occupational therapist. I'm hoping you can share how an occupational therapist can help someone with MS with their driving.
Well, as an occupational therapist, my training and education is really directed towards how an individual maintains their independence in what we would call activities of daily living. And driving is certainly one of those activities that we participate in on a daily basis. So driver rehab is really a specialty within occupational therapy.
Josh tells us he's been living with progressive MS for almost a decade. Lately, he's felt a slight decline in his mobility. So Josh wants to know how he will know when it's time to get a driving evaluation.
Yeah, this is a really common question. So I think that when we're seeing clients here in our office, they often talk about, I've just become more anxious or worried about my driving as I'm out and moving about. So maybe my right leg doesn't feel like it's moving towards that brake as easily as it should, or I'm not positive that my foot is actually firmly on a pedal, whether it's the accelerator or the brake. And really at the very end, people will start to talk about that they occasionally will need to lift their right leg behind the knee with their arm because they're not sure that it's actually gotten to the correct pedal. So, that is sort of a progression of the need for a comprehensive driving evaluation. But as soon the early signs are when somebody begins to feel anxious about driving, it's just not as easy as it used to be.
We heard from Kara, who says that she's recently had a relapse that affected her ability to grip the steering wheel. The doctor told her she might benefit from a driving evaluation. First, can you explain what happens in a driving evaluation?
Absolutely. So, a comprehensive driving evaluation typically takes place in two parts. The first part of that evaluation is going to be clinically based. So we're going to look at a wide variety of things that could be affecting someone's ability to drive. That can be cognition, it can be vision, it can be motor, movement, and then of course sensory as well. If somebody is using a mobility device of any kind, like a walker, a cane, a wheelchair, we're also going to assess that device as well, because that device needs to be transported, of course, with the individual. So we're going to do this full clinical assessment and determine one's ability to be a safe driver. If somebody is going to need some sort of adaptive equipment to be able to drive, such as hand controls, if again that right leg isn't behaving and we're not getting it between the pedals, or gripping the steering wheel as well. We have a fleet of vehicles that have a wide variety of adaptive driving equipment in it, so that we can begin a driving actual out behind the wheel assessment, generally in a parking lot, to begin to introduce that adaptive driving equipment. Now, depending on if somebody is addressing their driving skill early on in their diagnosis, they may not need adaptive driving equipment yet, but it's important to be able to establish that baseline of driving safety following that diagnosis. And then as the MS progresses, then we can begin to look at adaptive driving equipment. After we've done that behind the wheel assessment, then we'll come together as a group, the therapist, the client, and, a husband or wife or whomever is with the individual, and make a recommendation on what needs to happen next.
Well, how can Kara go about finding a qualified professional to perform this kind of assessment?
That's a great question. So we have a national professional organization called the Association for Driver Rehabilitation Specialists. Its website is A as in apple, D as in dog, E, and then D as in dog.net. So ADED is the sort of the acronym that we go by, although it doesn't match the actual name. But there's a evaluator locator on that website that Kara can go to and find somebody in her area.
Are there any documents that Kara should bring with her to that evaluation? Or is there any information that healthcare providers should submit on her behalf?
Yeah. So in order, our best practices as driving evaluators says that we need to have a doctor's prescription in order to complete that assessment. So the first thing that Kara should ask is for a prescription from her medical provider. Generally in our office, it just has to say something to the effect of driving assessment or driving test, something along those lines. So that's always the first step. Then, contacting the specific provider, evaluator that she's going to be seeing in her area to determine other things that is necessary for their needs. Here in our program, we ask people to make sure that they bring a list of their current medications, make sure that they have their eyeglasses with them, and of course that their driver's license is current and valid. So sometimes somebody has not been driving for a period of time when they come in for their driving assessment, and we discover that their driver license has expired last month, for instance. So making sure that that driver license is current is really important.
Samuel lives with MS and uses a power wheelchair for mobility. And Samuel wants to know what options are available that will allow him to maintain his driving independence.
Yeah. So, assuming that because he's using a power wheelchair, his lower extremities are weakened with his MS. So likely we're looking at some sort of adaptive driving equipment with regard to hand controls and things like that. But specifically regarding the power wheelchair, part of our assessment will be about identifying a vehicle and the vehicle modifications that might be necessary in order to transport that power wheelchair. And there are many. Wheelchair or lowered floor wheelchair accessible vans are quite common. This is something that he'd be able to drive up into in his wheelchair. But there's also different devices as far as being able to carry it, load and stow the wheelchair, for instance, in the bed of a pickup or on a hitch mounted lift or in the back of an SUV. It really depends on the vehicle that we're starting with. If Samuel is driving a Honda Accord, we may need to be looking at a different vehicle that will be able to accommodate transportation of that power wheelchair because of its weight and size. But that's part of the assessment that we would be doing for him.
Justine says she knows that modifications can help mitigate physical symptoms, but she's wondering whether there are any modifications that could assist with her cognitive changes.
Yeah, that's one of the most difficult parts of our job whenever we're seeing any diagnosis. But there are some specific things that you can do, sort of depending on the specific cognitive changes that somebody is seeing. So for instance, limiting the driving area that somebody is driving in the state of Arizona, and this can change depending on the state or the jurisdiction that somebody is licensed within. But my most experiences here in Arizona, we're able to apply a 5-mile restriction to somebody's driver license. So what that means is that we will go out and assess their skills out near their home in their most familiar areas. So for instance, that allows somebody to be able to maintain that level of independence within that 5 miles of their home, which is generally where we're doing most of our grocery shopping and banking and pharmacy and church or getting your hair cut. The majority of the things that we're doing are within that 5 miles. And this can be helpful with regard to, memory issues or navigation issues and things like that. Not everybody is successful in that 5-mile radius restriction, but often it can be sort of a bridge for that declining independence. So really, she'd have to determine what the restrictions are within her jurisdiction, but modifying the driving route, using right-hand turns only when possible, finding routes that have green arrows so that there's no decision to be made to yielding oncoming traffic. Those sorts of modifications or adjustments in driving can happen as well.
Angela tells us that her mother has lived with MS her whole adult life. And as her mother ages, Angela has begun to worry every time her mom gets behind the wheel. Now, Angela's mother won't listen to her concerns and has continued driving. Does Angela have a responsibility to report her mother as a potentially unsafe driver?
This goes back to the jurisdictions a little bit as well. Angela herself does not have a responsibility to report her mother. In most areas, as I talk to people around the country, most jurisdictions leave it to the driver themselves. We all are responsible adults, and we know we can't have an extra glass of wine at dinner and get out and drive. The same thing applies here. In some states, my understanding is in California, for instance, it can be the medical provider's responsibility to notify the motor vehicle department or the licensing agency of concerns about that individual. But a family member does not have responsibility to report a parent.
What would happen if someone who's been diagnosed with MS, someone like Angela's mother, were to get into an accident?
Who knows? The concern would be, so let's come back here to Arizona where I can sort of talk with experience. In the state of Arizona, there's a statute that says that if you've had a change in your medical condition or diagnosis, you have to notify the motor vehicle department. And that is a common requirement in most states. And what that does is it triggers a form that a medical provider needs to complete and submit to the motor vehicle department, noting whether or not this person should continue with their driving privileges. If somebody has not done that, the question becomes, in this fictitious collision that we're talking about, was that individual safe to be out driving post-diagnosis? Let's of course take MS as our example. And so we're not sure if they should have been driving. Sometimes that then requires an assessment through somebody like our company, and we then say yes or no that Susie is a safe driver, and therefore it's just a collision like we might get into at any point. But it does leave that question open as to whether or not the MS was affecting that individual during that situation. Versus having completed the medical review process, then that collision is, the MS in this case is documented, safe to be driving. Now that sort of eliminates that question as to whether or not somebody is safe to be driving.
We heard from Jessica, who says that she's actually been evaluated. She's ready for the next step, but she's feeling a little overwhelmed by the process. How can Jessica know which modifications she needs or what vehicle is right for her?
Yeah. Well, her evaluator should really be helping her through those steps. So generally what happens, and again, per our best practices as professionals, is we've completed that comprehensive assessment in two parts like we talked about earlier. If Jessica is requiring some sort of adaptive equipment to drive, that recommendation would be made, and she would complete those training sessions with that driving evaluator. Now, in our state and in our practice here, all of those training sessions are required to be completed in our vehicles for a variety of reasons. Number one is which there's a passenger side brake on our vehicles, and we have a wide variety of adaptive equipment so we can adjust if we're not successful with one. So then once somebody has gotten through that training process, then we would be helping Jessica to identify the most appropriate vehicle. It could be the vehicle that she already owns, but like we talked about earlier, if somebody now has to transport a power wheelchair, they may need to have some sort of a new vehicle as well. So we would connect somebody with a mobility equipment dealer, talk about the vehicle that we're modifying, and then the evaluator writes what's called a vehicle modification prescription, or something close to that title, and that will outline the, Jessica's situation, the vehicle that we're modifying, any mobility device that we need to transport, and the adaptive equipment that needs to be installed. Then we will meet that, Jessica in this case, at the mobility dealer at the time of installation, so that we can do a checkout drive and know that everything is working beautifully in her personal vehicle following that installation.
So when someone is ready for that vehicle, do you provide the vendor or the accessible vehicle dealer for them, or is that something they have to find on their own?
No, we're happy to provide a list of qualified vendors, in her area or in our area, because it's important for that person to develop a relationship with that dealer, that mobility equipment dealer, so that any repairs or warranty work or maintenance can be done, at a qualified dealer that's close to home.
Simon tells us that he receives disability benefits for his MS. He knows the cost of modified vehicles is high. His question is pretty simple. How can he pay for what he needs?
Yeah. I'll tell you, the MS Society has been really supportive of driver rehab. That would be a common program for somebody to go to, so that he can maintain his employment, which is really what the vocational rehab's goal is to make sure that individuals with whatever disability they may have are able to continue to be employed. The VA system is also, helpful in that. And then we'll find other funding sources out and about as well. Churches or synagogues will often help to fund some of these things as sort of part of their health mission. We have different foundations in our community that we've connected with. So, our practice publishes a list of funding resources that we can provide to folks to help them with the expense.
We heard from Lucy. Her situation is a little different from Simon's. Lucy is still able to work, but she's also worried about the cost of vehicle modifications. Now, Lucy tells us that she actually drives a van, and she's wondering if she can have her van modified for less than it would cost to purchase an already modified van.
So that completely depends on the age of Lucy's van and the number of miles that are on it, and really, to be honest, the make and model of the van as well. So there are very specific requirements that the lowered floor vehicle modifiers have for those vehicles. So that would be a direct question that would have to go to the mobility equipment dealer.
Well, you've shared some very useful and really important information about how to drive safely when you're living with MS. What would you say are the top 3 takeaways that you'd like our viewers to remember?
I think that it's really important that people know that a diagnosis of MS certainly does not prohibit them from being able to drive, but it may be in a different fashion. And so we just need to make sure that somebody is still safe out there and driving. The second thing would be to be properly licensed following a diagnosis of MS. And then that really there are funding options for folks. We just have to be a little creative sometimes.
Well, thanks for sharing your expertise with us. I think we have time to answer a few more questions from our audience. We heard from Katie. Now, Katie's looking into getting a modified vehicle, but says she doesn't really like the look of a van. Does Katie have other car model options?
Yeah, actually, Braun Ability modifies a Chevy Traverse, which is a SUV. So that is certainly an option for her without getting into the minivan realm. But there's also other, sort of modifications that can be added to an existing vehicle. So again, depending on the vehicle itself, there's other companies that have Adapt Solutions, for instance, has different equipment that will help somebody to get up and into a vehicle, different styles of seats, for instance, or an arm that comes out and brings a manual wheelchair into the midship of a non-lowered floor minivan. Or other companies that have a sort of a crane style lift that will lift a scooter or wheelchair into the bed of a pickup. So there are, and there's others as well, but that's really part of the reason that it's important to connect with professionals that work in this area every single day, whether they're other driver evaluators like myself or mobility equipment dealers. These are the things that we do each and every day, and so we have annual conferences that keep us up on the latest adaptive equipment that are available for our community members.
Sheila tells us that she's lived with relapsing remitting MS for over 30 years, but she doesn't generally experience any physical symptoms. She's almost 65 years old, and Sheila is wondering if she should automatically have her driving evaluated once she hits a certain age.
I'm not really a proponent of age-related assessments or retesting. It has everything to do with one's skill. So I've often said that I have evaluated people over the years that are in their late 70s and 80s that are really great drivers. And then I've seen other folks at the age of 60 that are not. And so it really has everything to do with one's skill level and their responsibility as a driver out there, and the effects that their driving has on themselves and their passengers certainly, but the other drivers as well. So, if somebody is beginning to be concerned about their driving, I think that it's a good idea to identify the baseline of their skill, and maybe the evaluator will have some recommendations that will make them feel more confident out in driving, even on those days that she's not feeling quite as good.
Lucas says he's feeling frustrated because his son suggested he have a driving evaluation. Lucas tells us he's been driving since he was a teenager, and he wants to know why he would need to be evaluated now.
Yeah, Lucas, it's really related to this diagnosis. I think that we've all been driving and we apparently have been doing it successfully, but it has everything to do with the fact that MS could affect somebody's ability to drive safely, whether it is someone's cognition or motor skills or sensory. We just need to make sure that somebody continues to be a safe driver. So, this is a common concern that many people have, is that their children are now bringing up this really very difficult topic. And so I think that it's important to know that, our adult children don't want us to limit our ability to be independent. And so if somebody is bringing it up, it generally is a genuine concern, and just wanting to make sure that their parent is safe and covering all those bases as far as the legalities of it.
Well, I want to thank everyone who submitted some great questions, and thank you, Jenny, for being with us today.
You're so welcome.
Before we close, I want to remind you that the National MS Society's MS Navigator team is your best partner when it comes to connecting you to the very best information and resources on living with MS. You can reach an MS Navigator by phone, email, or through the Society's website by chat. For information and resources on MS, please visit the Society's website. You'll find research updates and news, information on connection programs like self-help groups and MS Friends. You'll hear about ways to get involved, and you'll find out about upcoming events that are taking place near you. Remember, you can connect with the National MS Society and others affected by MS on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I hope you'll join me every week on the Real Talk MS podcast, where I continue the conversation that we start here. You'll find Real Talk MS at realtalkms.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. I'd like to thank Jenny for joining us today. Please remember that a recording of this webcast will be available at the Society's website. at nationalmssociety.org/msexpert, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you'll join us at this same time for next week's edition of Ask an MS Expert.
Okay, you want to get
You
close
can always
for
find our
after the bath?
upcoming program topics on the National MS Society's website. And now I have a favor to ask each of you. Getting your feedback on today's webcast is important. So if you're watching on Facebook Live, you'll see a link to a survey pinned to the comments section. On YouTube, you'll find that link in the program description. And on Twitch, find that link in the chat. Completing the survey makes a real difference. The information you provide helps us continuously improve, and it helps shape future programs. The survey takes just 1 minute, so I hope you'll take a minute to fill it out. On behalf of Jenny Nordine and National MS Society, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Please stay safe and make healthy choices. Welcome to this week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. I'm John Strum, and I'm the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with the news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways that MS can impact a family. Currently, I serve on the MS Society's Community Review of MS Research Committee. I'm a district activist leader and trustee for the National MS Society, and I chair the Society's California Government Relations Advisory Committee. The MS Society's Ask an MS Expert webcast is designed to give us a place for the MS community to connect, and to connect you with experts who are ready to answer your questions on the topics that impact people affected by MS every day. Please feel free to post those comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. MS Navigators are online throughout today's program, answering questions and connecting you to resources. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank today's contributing sponsors, Genentech and Novartis. Support from MS community partners helps the National MS Society reach its goal of providing up-to-date information and support through programs like Ask an MS Expert. Getting diagnosed with MS can be challenging. Not everyone experiences the typical symptoms of MS, and some of these symptoms can mimic those of other conditions, making the diagnostic process more difficult. Joining us today to discuss the common signs and symptoms of MS, as well as share strategies for being proactive throughout the diagnostic process, is Dr. Leora Freeman. Dr. Freeman is the director of the Multiple Sclerosis and Neuroimmunology Center at Dell Medical School, the University of Texas at Austin, where she also leads the MS and Neuroimmunology Fellowship Program and the MS Imaging and Outcomes Research Laboratory. Her research focuses on the development
go
of
get a roll of
data-driven
paper towels
approaches
out of the garage
to predict
and
and
put them in the
improve
glass
the
cleaner in
long-term
the bathroom?
outcomes of people living with MS. She's passionate about eliminating disparities in MS research and care, and routinely works with advocacy and community organizations to help people with MS thrive. Welcome, Dr. Freeman, and thanks for being with us today.
It's such a pleasure to be with you, John. Very excited to be here.
Well, why don't we start by talking about the process of diagnosing multiple sclerosis, and maybe the best place to start is with a definition. So tell me, what is multiple sclerosis, and what are some of the common symptoms?
So MS is an inflammatory disease of the central nervous system, and what we call the central nervous system is the optic nerve, brain, and spinal cord. In the process of MS, the body's immune system attacks the myelin sheath, the protecting layers that covers the nerve fibers. And in this process of demyelination, this process causes a disruption of the flow of information between our nervous system and the rest of the body. And this can lead to a variety of different symptoms. Those symptoms will depend on where the damage occurs and how severe the damage is. So people with MS can, be affected by many different types of symptoms. For example, let's say the optic nerve are inflamed and and there's demyelination in that area, they can experience visual symptoms of visual loss or blurry vision. Different areas of the brain can cause different symptoms of weakness of a limb or sensory changes, gait abnormalities, imbalance. We often see also bowel or bladder issues in people with MS. It's also important to remind folks that MS can cause a lot of invisible symptoms. There are symptoms people cannot see. Fatigue is one of them that's very common. Cognitive changes, difficulty with information processing and memory can also be a part of the MS journey.
What makes it difficult to diagnose MS, and how long could getting that diagnosis take?
So this has changed over time. I've been in practice now about 15 years, and even during the time of my career, our diagnostic criteria have changed, and this has allowed us to diagnose MS earlier and earlier in the course of disease. So today, in a person who experienced their first symptoms, if those symptoms that are recognized early and the right test, an MRI usually is ordered early in the course of symptoms, then people can receive a diagnosis fairly quickly, sometimes in a matter of days after onset of their symptoms. But we also see, and you're aware of that, we also see a lot of delays in the diagnosis of MS and misdiagnoses. And this is due to the fact that, MS causes a variety of symptoms. Different people with MS will have very different symptoms. And sometimes the doctors that patients see when they experience those first signs are not aware that those symptoms can be caused by MS, and sometimes order the wrong test, or even worse, will dismiss the person, blaming anxiety or stress as being the cause of their problems. So that's a big reason why we see delays. Also, it's important to know that MS is often diagnosed with imaging, with an MRI that shows bright spots that correspond to those lesions, those areas where the myelin sheath is damaged, but there are other conditions that can also cause bright spots in the brain, such as migraines or vascular changes or other inflammatory conditions. And sometimes, the bright spots may be seen but attributed to another condition, and that can lead to more diagnosis delay.
For many people, vision problems are often the first symptom of multiple sclerosis. What are some of the most common vision issues that individuals with MS might face?
Again, it depends of where people experience damage due to MS. If people experience issues with their optic nerve, they may have symptoms of what we call optic neuritis, that's causing blurry vision, blind spots in their vision, which we'll call scotoma, loss of vision. Pain with eye movement is very common. Changes in color vision, that's different. Sometimes people describe like a gray veil over their eye. Lesions in other parts of the brain, particularly the brainstem, can cause different kind of visual problems, double vision, difficulty coordinating the eyes together, or abnormal movement of the eye, something that we call in our jargon nystagmus.
Vanessa tells us that she recently saw a neurologist because she was experiencing blind spots and poor vision. She was diagnosed with clinically isolated syndrome, or CIS. What is CIS, and can CIS develop into multiple sclerosis?
Absolutely. So from what you describe, I would say this is kind of a very typical initial presentation of MS with what we call optic neuritis, and which is inflammation of the optic nerve. But sometimes people have optic neuritis but don't have other findings consistent with MS or minimal findings. So they have an initial attack, but they don't fully validate the criteria for multiple sclerosis. And this is what we call CIS, clinically isolated syndrome. It's this first event that doesn't quite fully validate the criteria for MS. People who have CIS may develop MS later on, particularly if they have some findings elsewhere in their central nervous system that is suggestive of MS. So let's say...
All right, I know this is super riveting, but we're going to end stream here. I got some things to take care of. I got to build a wheelchair to see if all the parts are together. Clean a couple things around the house. So I love all of you. For those of you that are lurking, if there's anybody even still lurking at this point, because I know this is the most super exciting stream you hang out in all day when I'm stuck working. I love you. I'll see you guys in the next one.